Okay. Hey, everybody. We'll be up. Oh, we should be up now. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Oh, what a beautiful day.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I
Yes,
got a
ma'am.
feeling some things will
You
be
did a
going
great
my
job
way.
on Tish's. You did a great job on Tish's
Oh,
um, podcast the other day.
Stephen, you just love me. That's what it is, baby. And I appreciate
That
that.
too, but you did an amazing job as
I
well.
appreciate that you just love me. You know what? Are you all are people
Just the praise team, musicians, and video crew.
I wondered about that because I wanted to come by one of these Sundays,
Okay.
but I didn't think anyone was
Yes.
there.
Now you can come by. You just tell me you coming, and you'll be fine.
Honey, wait a minute. Hold on. You are going to love this, Stephen.
Uh
Do you guess what the vaccination rate in Japan is? Where they're gonna have the Olympics? Guess.
huh. 50%.
You get one more guess.
80.
1%. Do you hear me,
1%.
baby? They don't like those vaccines over there. Yes. Oh yes,
They
yes.
getting their vitamin D
They mm,
doing holistic.
they do well. The thing is, they had vaccine accidents, right?
Okay,
And so that made them say no, we don't want these.
back off.
Yep,
Got it.
they have a 1% vaccination rate in Japan. One
Wow.
percent, and this is from. Uh, I saw this in an NPR report, so I chased it down, and so I chased down a
Yeah.
whole lot of different stories about it. Um, and uh, and this is from Shigenori Doi, who runs the vaccination program in a particular ward in Japan. And
Okay.
he said, as this month began, this is from the NPR reporter, only 1/10 of 1% of Japan's population had been fully vaccinated. Less than 1% had received a
20
dose.
seconds.
Can you believe that?
Mm.
I mean,
Wow.
yeah, it's just like, wait, and y'all are rushing to get the. Are y'all gonna get everybody vaccinated by the Olympics? You guys.
Yes, I just pulled it up.
Mm.
Wow.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Oh, hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is Wednesday. Excuse me, no, Tuesday. Wow. Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. WCPT 820 in Chicago, AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and WCPT Chicago, the largest progressive station in the nation. And you all are coming in from all over the country, indeed, from all over the world, tuning into this station because we are giving you news you can use, and really the truth matters, and that's what we give you on this station, on these stations. And so I'm so pleased to be here. I want you to call me or text me at 773-763 WCPT, 773-763-9278. GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text, and I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you today. We've got a lot to talk about. The U.S. Census has shown that we've had the second lowest growth, population growth in our history. The only time that the United States has grown so little was during the Great Depression from 1930 to 1940. And people started moving during the pandemic. People really started moving as economic times got harder. And so we're seeing a great power shift in the United States from the coasts to the South and to the Great West. It'll be very, very interesting to see where that goes. People are saying initially that the Republicans will be favored by that, but I don't know. More and more African Americans are migrating back to the South, which is where we started in this country. And Raphael Warnock is one of the manifestations of that. So we're going to talk about that today. And then the adultification of Black girls in particular. Yeah. Many people feel that Ma'Khia Bryant was the victim of the adultification of Black girls. This is where Black girls are seen as being older than they are, more mature than they are, more, more promiscuous, more free in their intimate space. All of these things that are not true, and less innocent than white girls. Wow. And so all of these things kind of make you more killable. So we're going to be talking about that today with the former president of NABLEO, the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Officers, with attorney C.K. Hoffler, and with one of your favorites, Mrs. Chaparral Wells, who's got two daughters, one of whom just came out of Illinois State University this past weekend, magna cum laude. Love it, love it, love it. And on her way to law school. But of course, she lost a son. And so we're going to talk about that, and we want to hear from you about that because that's a very, very real issue. But in the meantime, we got some, and of course, we're going to get some good news from Pastor Stephen Thurston, the teaching pastor at Salem Baptist Church, and COVID-19 updates. So much is going on, everybody. Let's get to some of these headlines. Chicago, it's going to be positively summer-like today. 81 degrees, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 57 degrees. Rain. Let's bring it down just a little bit, Dylan. That's a little loud. There you go. The NASDAQ closed up 121 points yesterday. The Dow closed down 61 points. The S&P 500 closed up 7 points. And in Major League Baseball, the Twins, well, they went down to Cleveland, 5-3. The Cubs, barely beaten by Atlanta, 8-7. And then the White Sox will be playing the Tigers tonight. Well, as I shared with you, the U.S. population rose just 7.4% to 331 million people. This is the lowest population growth that we've had in our history since they started measuring these things. The only time that so few Americans came into the world, or came into the American population, was between 1930 and 1940. Remember, everybody, got to participate in that census. Second slowest pace in history. And who are the winners and the losers? Wow. Illinois lost a congressional district, everybody. Illinois. Michigan lost a congressional district. Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York. That's right. All lost congressional districts, even California. Texas gained 2, Florida gained 1, North Carolina gained 1, Colorado gained 1, Montana gained 1, Oregon gained 1. We're going to be talking about that with Kevin Gray at the bottom of the hour, and of course, attorney Robert Patillo. The Justice Department is going to investigate Louisville police practices after Breonna Taylor's fatal shooting. So now we got the Justice Department in Louisville, Kentucky, and in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Will they be going to North Carolina next? We will see. Val Demings, Congresswoman and former police chief. She said something on Sunday that people were a little surprised, but she's a former police chief. She said that the officer who shot teenager Ma'Khia Bryant in Ohio responded as he was trained to do. She was on Face the Nation. She spoke about the Columbus officer's actions and how her time as the Orlando, Florida police chief informed her perspective on police reform. Wow. So what do you think about that? What do you think about that? He was doing as he was trained to do, but was it the right thing? We're going to be talking about that, of course, in just a few minutes. Did you know this, everybody? 6 people were killed by the police in the United States in the 24 hours, in just a 24-hour period after Derek Chauvin was found guilty of murder, everybody. Indeed, throughout his trial, throughout the George Floyd murder trial. Killings by police mounted every day between March 29th and April 17th alone. 3 persons were killed by police every day in the United States. That's a lot of folks, everybody. The public's concerns over the J&J vaccine are widespread, according to a Washington Post ABC poll. Fewer than 1 in 4 Americans not yet immunized against the coronavirus said they would be willing to get the vaccine. Fewer than 1 in 4, everybody. So what do you think about that? We're going to have to ask Dr. Jennifer Holden about that. And then there's a study coming out of Israel that says that they're beginning to examine whether we're having heart inflammation issues after we receive the Pfizer COVID shot. Remember, there is risk involved in every medicine you take. You need to read the fine print on everything. Doesn't mean you don't need to take it. You just need to know what the risks are. But guess what? We're about to have the Olympics in Tokyo. At least that's still the plan. But did you know, guess how many people, guess what percentage of the Japanese are vaccinated? Okay, 1, 2. Do you think it's 50%? Do you think it's 80%? Only 1/10 of 1% of Japan's population has been fully vaccinated. Almost all of them are medical workers. This is from an NPR report. What do you think about that? Do you think should they still have the Olympics there? What do you think about that? And wait a minute. While President Biden, who will be speaking before a joint session of Congress tomorrow, as he is pushing to get this $2 trillion infrastructure package through. Did you know that Congress, of course, bailed out Utah, and they've been bailing out states all over the country. They bailed out Utah. Pastor Thurston gave them $1.5 billion. But why would they do that when Utah has a $1.5 billion budget surplus? You tell me about that. I don't know. And the Oscars, nobody watched it. 9.8 million people watched it. This is a plunge of nearly 60%. Young people have tuned out of the Oscars. Pastor Stephen Thurston, the teaching pastor of the Salem Baptist Church, the House of Hope. Help me. What are you saying? Talk to me.
Hey, Santita. Always glad to be with you and your audience. Here's my challenge for us today, in spite of all of these major headlines you've dropped on us. I want to challenge us to grow our grit today. I've discovered that to perform at the highest level on a regular basis, you need more than just talent, experience, and resilience. Grit has to be part of that equation as well. For those who are unclear about what grit really is, grit is the ability to focus and work towards your goals over long periods of time, despite any obstacles or competing interests. Like the other qualities I just mentioned previously, grit is shaped by our experiences and strengthened with practice. And while the essence of grit may seem elusive, I got 5 characteristics that I'd like to highlight. Number 1, grit is comprised of courage. And courage isn't the absence of fear. We all deal with fear, but the ability to triumph over it, to move forward in spite of fear. Number 2, there's got to be conscientiousness. It's the trait of being tough, careful, and vigilant. Number 3, there's got to be perseverance, because struggle is a doorway to pleasure. To persevere, to start and continue steadfastly on the path towards your goal. 4, there's got to be resilience, toughness. That's the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, because you see difficulties as stepping stones to transformation. And then number 5, there's got to be passion. And passion is important because it creates excellence even when mediocrity will do. And when we look at successful companies, successful organizations, and successful individuals, we see their current success and preeminence. But what we often don't see is the leadership grit that powers them through failure, moments of doubt, heartaches, fear, and pain. 2 people I want to highlight today that we're all familiar with, but many of us may not know their name. Kevin Plank is the first person. For those unfamiliar, he's the CEO of a company by the name of Under Armour. Many of us have heard of Under Armour and wear it. In 1995, he was selling one product, a T-shirt, from his grandmother's basement with $40,000 in credit card debt used to launch that business. Fast forward, he's worth $2+ billion because of grit. Sarah Blakely Many of you ladies know who she is. You use her product on a regular basis. She created Spanx. When we go back and look at her history and her track record, she was selling Spanx build a winning team, move successful organization to the next level, or Santita, just make it through the basic things, the basic days in life, you're going to need perseverance and you're going to need some grit. And through the stress of rejection, the pain of failure, and struggles with adversity, it's grit that's not going to let you quit. So for those who are asking, well, Stephen, how can I grow my grit? I got a little bit of it, but I want to grow it. Let me give you 3 things you can do, and I'll be out of your way. Number 1, grit starts with knowing what you truly want. You got to know your why, because when you know what you want, it's easier to work hard for it. Your grit has to be greater than the negativity and the naysayers. Others may not see what you see in your future, and that's fine. It's your vision, not theirs. Let them have cataracts while you got vision. Number 2, again, you got to know your why, because the power of purpose not only fuels positivity, but also drives grit in a major way. Knowing your why limits the impact of obstacles that you're going to run into. And when your purpose is greater than your challenges, you're going to make it to that finish line. And finally, you've got to love it. If you don't love it, you'll never be great at it. And you won't work to overcome the challenges that hit you along the way. Success, it's created by the love you have inside of you for the things that you do. The love and grit you have on the inside are going to create the life you experience on the outside. Your challenge today is to grow your grit.
Amen. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Pastor Stephen Thurston. Everybody, you've got to get his book, Mirror Moments. I promise you, life changing. Life changing. Pastor Thurston, we have to work out when we can do that because I think we're having a mirror moment, not just personally, but
Yes,
institutionally, the country, the world. Where just very quickly, how can you
yes,
relate?
ma'am.
How can you relate to your book in less than a minute to what we're dealing with just in the world today?
The things, the challenges, the changes that are taking place all position us to take an introspective look because what happens to us on the inside impacts everything on the outside. It all begins on the inside of us. And so as we take this collective breath, have a moment of introspection, find the things that we need to root out, some stuff we need to kill, some stuff needs to die, some stuff we just need to gut. As we go through that process and we evolve as individuals, we'll evolve as a community, as a country, as a nation, as a world, and become better people and a better place. But it's got to start within to change what's on the outside. Have that mirror moment.
And get in that mirror and do more than put on that lipstick or comb back that hair. Hello.
And then Spain.
You just go too far. Pastor Stephen Thurston, before I get mad with him this morning. Love him so much. And give my love to your mom and your dad. Very, very, we're
I will.
family. We are family for sure. I love Pastor Stephen Thurston,
Yes.
teaching pastor of the Salem Baptist Church. And I love this woman who's coming up, Dr. Deb. We all love Dr. Deb. Dr. Deborah Furr Holden, affectionately known to us as Dr. Deb, the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University, one of the world's leading epidemiologists. We've had the privilege of having her on this show every day to give us news we can use, news that we trust as we're in this pandemic and as we look to increase our health otherwise, because this is something that you're eager to talk about, and we'll do this another day. The other issues that we're dealing with are other health issues, even beyond the pandemic. But today's supposed to be a big day, Dr. Deb, particularly for people in your space. The CDC is expected to announce new guidelines about the use of outdoor masks today. I mean, and now it's going to be 81 degrees in Chicago today. I mean, it still could snow tomorrow. It is April after all. But we're moving into the summer months. We're moving into the warmer part of our year where we want to go out, Dr. Deb. But we're still not at a 30% vaccination rate, or we're not getting these shots that can mitigate COVID-19. What is the CDC expected to announce? What do you think the president is going to say about what we can and cannot do if we have had these shots?
Well, unfortunately, I had high hopes for my brothers and sisters at the CDC. And this is why I tell people there's no one end-all, be-all organization in all of this. The CDC has issued some wonky guidance at times, and they blamed it all on the former president. And then we got a new president, and they have continued to issue some wonky guidance. And they have continued to put some things out and then retract those things. Same behavior that we saw, and they're under a new director. So the CDC has already said if you're around fully vaccinated people, you don't have to be masked. You don't have to practice social distancing. The problem that I have with that statement is that only works if people are honoring protocols outside of that. Because you could have just been living your best life unmasked with a bunch of other people who weren't vaccinated, then get around people who are, have breathed it in and breathed it out, and then expose people who are vaccinated. It's not just about the people who you're around. It's about the people that they're around. So honestly, I don't know what they're going to say. I'm assuming, like many of us, they're going to do their dog and pony show, try to talk people back into getting the J&J, because we need the one-shot solution, because a lot of people, unfortunately, are not coming back to get the second dose. If they don't get the second dose, that means we're going to see a lot more of what we call breakthrough cases. These will be cases that have been vaccinated, that haven't been fully vaccinated, but end up contracting not just, you can be a breakthrough case and be fully vaccinated. The likelihood of that, it gets really, really low. I think they've had about 5,000 in the U.S. total so far, people who've been vaccinated and still contracted COVID, but they do a lot better than the people who are unvaccinated. By contrast, and it's so hard to listen to people. They just have so little information, but the information that they do have, how they integrate it into their decision making, it's really sad to watch. We're talking about 5,000 total breakthrough cases. I'm going to give you a couple of other stats that I want people to consider. 99% of hospitalized COVID cases, 99% of them are all unvaccinated. So 99% of the people who are getting the sickest and showing up to the hospital and needing care are unvaccinated. Yesterday, we talk about where are we in the surge and the cycle and all of that. India yesterday recorded almost 325,000 new infections in the past 24 hours. And they say that was a 10% drop from the day before, which was about 350,000. But they think mostly that's because of testing. They just simply can't keep up with all the testing. We have had more new coronavirus cases in the last week than we had in the first 5 months of this pandemic. More in the past week than we did in the first 5 months. Remember the first 5 months when it was like, oh my goodness, what is happening? What is going on? And then you started to hear about and know people that got COVID and, all this stuff. We've exceeded that in a week, what we had in the first 5 months. And we still quibble and fight over, well, I don't want the vaccine. I don't know. I don't this. And people have, it's people's rights. They can do what they want. Everybody's on, pins and on their tippy toes, waiting for the CDC to tell them they can get back to business as usual or something close to it. What people don't realize is they're so worried about these 6 and whatever blood clots. And I wouldn't care if it was underreported. Do you realize the COVID, this SARS-CoV-2 affects every single system in your body? The little receptors that you have in your body and that little spike protein out on the edge of that coronavirus, you've got cells that those proteins unlock in your ovaries, in your heart, in your liver, in your kidneys. Every major, in men, you have them in your testes. Every major organ system in your body has receptors that those spike proteins unlock the receptor and let the whole cell in. You get this virus, it's going all through your body. It's going to touch everything that it wants to, that it can. It's going to go everywhere. It's going to wreak havoc. And people say, well, my body's strong. It can fight it off and da-da-da-da. And you might be able to. But it's the difference between, and I don't know if you've ever had your house broken into. I've had my house broken into 3 times in Baltimore. And the last time it was terrible. And we ultimately caught the guys who did it. I didn't know them. They didn't know me. They were young, and they went through my house, and instead of just stealing, they vandalized everything in my house. They dumped a big thing of seasoned salt into my big, beautiful fish tank. They slashed my couch. They punched holes in the wall. That's what coronavirus does in your body.
Wow.
It's going to go all through your body and have its way with your body. I just want to make sure that people know that and they understand that. Because as they bury people in record numbers in India, I want us to make sure that we are eyes wide open, doing what we can to avoid that fate for ourselves and our families.
And that's why we need you, because we need the information. And we need information that is, we need to get one stream of thought, which is what's happened.
Yeah.
You know, the messaging on this has not been the strongest. And so we're so grateful to have you here.
And too many sound bites.
Too many sound bites, and you know what? And quite frankly, when the J&J CEO gets a $10 million payout in the midst of all of this, with the problems they're having, not a good look. Everybody, let's talk about the census. The South gained a lot of power. Back with more in just a minute on the Santita Jackson Show. All right, thank you, sweetie. You know what? Oh, hold on. Sorry. You know what I want us to do, Deborah?
What?
I'm going to send you this article because, you know, you've talked about this. And so I started, you know me, I started looking for it. Couple of things. I'm going to send you this stuff. You know, Japan, they have only 0.1% of Japan has been fully vaccinated. 0.1%. And we're going to the Olympics there, which is interesting as we're looking at, you know, these vaccination cards. But I want you to, let's think about that. But I want us to dig into, because that can be down a little too down in the weeds. I want to dig into the diabetes, heart disease, obesity, malnutrition. You know, these things that heart disease, these are the things that are killing us. Because now, I mean, with being masked, we don't even have to worry about the flu. But, you know, you're talking about equity and healthfulness and things like that. I really want us to look at that one day.
Yeah.
Really, because we've got to pay attention to all of these things, all of them. So I thought, I said, let me say this to her before she has to run and do something else.
I'm on my way back to Flint, Michigan today.
Oh my gosh.
That's what's on tap today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on. You know what? Hold on. I changed my headphones and you only hear the static when I speak.
Right lane remains closed after
Kevin Gray and Patillo are on.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have to separate this out because we're going to have to disaggregate. You know what, Dylan? I think we're going to have to separate the headphones and the mic.
Okay.
No,
I would talk to Jim about that just because he says it up.
I'll speak to Jim about it. I will. Because they're saying that they're only hearing static when I speak. But Deborah, I'm going to let you go. Let me bring up Robert Patillo and Kevin Gray. Let me move on to, girl, you know me, I'm moving on, moving to these different segments.
Was the music under back-end music? Could you hear it or no?
They said when I speak. Right. They could hear.
Right, but you said the music, the news bed was too loud, and I was just playing them under. Right, and so the back-end music, could you hear it in the background or no when I started playing it?
Can I hear what in the background?
Like when I played at 2630 or 5630, could you hear that?
Yeah.
You could?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But it was If you can just bring it down but you had it down at the right level.
Yeah, because it's under our normal level. I just
Okay.
brought it, but yeah, I just want to make sure you could hear it because it was hard for me to hear it in the studio.
No. Bringing it up is important because I have to get the guests out, and when they hear the music.
What do you want to end with as well?
No. Let's stay with the music.
No, I was wondering ending music. Do you have a preference, or should I just choose something?
Let's stay with. Let's not make
Healing.
I think that when they're not put in the system properly, that's been a complaint too. So let's just stay with the music that we've got, and we'll do that another time. Let me say hello to my guests, okay?
Okay.
Okay, Robert Patillo.
Good morning. How are
Hey, good. Kevin Gray.
you? Morning.
Kevin, hey, I'm coming to you first, because I want you to react to the census, and they're pushing the line that this is going to advantage the Republicans, and I said I'm not so sure about that. Because black people are moving back to the South, and I think we're changing things.
That's probably the main point.
Yeah,
That would be the main point.
no,
Young people.
I'm not going to step on that. I'm just going to ask you if you think it's true, and then you go right into it. And do you know Robert Patillo, the head of our Atlanta office, the Southeastern Regional Director?
We've never met.
Stand by. You should.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Wow, the U.S. population rises to 331 million. That's the good news. The tough news is that this is the slowest rate of growth in our population that we've seen, the second slowest rate of growth in our history, 7.4%. The only time that we've had so few people added to the American population was between 1930 and 1940, the Depression. Something to think about, everybody. And so this is a real issue because now we're watching a change in congressional representation because people moved out of California, people moved out of Illinois, people moved out of Michigan, people moved out of Ohio, and on and on and on and on. And Texas is growing, and North Carolina and Florida, and so much. And so people were saying this morning, new census numbers shift political power south to Republican strongholds. But is it really as simple as that? Kevin Gray, former president of the ACLU of South Carolina. Indeed, you were the architect of Reverend Jackson's presidential campaigns in 84 and 88 in South Carolina. And, of course, author and editor of the best-selling book, Killing Trayvons, an anthology of American violence. New census numbers shift a political power shift. A power shift to Republicans in the South, to Republicans in the West. Is that true?
Well, from what I've read, and even the numbers have gone up in South Carolina, our population numbers. I remember growing up and the population was 3 million people and black folk were a third. Now it's approaching 5 million people. And what's happening is a lot of black people are moving back to the South. Of course, most black people in the United States have always lived in the South. 65% of the African-American population it's been pretty static, has lived in the South. So now you see people moving from the metropolitan areas back to where their people are from, back to the South. So I think when you start looking at those numbers, you'll see that it may boost the Democratic or independent fortunes in some of these southern states as opposed to solidifying a southern state as being redder than it is now.
How will this play out? I mean, how... we're seeing in Illinois, we lost a congressional district. We lost it, when we lost a congressperson. And I'm not speaking in partisan terms, everybody. I'm just saying just the winners and losers. That's why we encourage you to be involved in the census, because we're seeing that California, for the first time in their history, lost a congressional representative. Oregon gained one, though. Montana gained a representative. Texas gained 2. Florida gained 1, North Carolina, and on and on. It's just, how do you think Raphael Warnock, for example, and John Ossoff are the beneficiaries, and Tim Scott even?
Absolutely. And the other part of it is people are moving
the states with a lower cost of living.
Okay.
The other issue, South Carolina, compared to, let's say, Illinois, compared to New York, even compared to North Carolina, although North Carolina is gay people. But when you look at the areas that they're moving from areas with a high cost of living versus those with lower cost of living. And then you also have to take gentrification into effect in some of the metropolitan areas where folk are consciously being priced and pushed out of those cities. So, as I said, if you look at those kinds of factors, of course, congressional representation and senatorial representation in the South with support of people of color would seem to be on the increase.
Robert Patillo, what are you seeing in Georgia? I mean, is this shift in the population, is this advantaging, in your mind, is it only advantaging Republicans, or are you seeing Black people, Asian people, young people, the Latinx community, by going south? I mean, is that increasing the power of these communities in that part of the country?
Well, absolutely, and that's the reason for all these voter suppression laws that are going around right now, because they have seen the writing on the wall for over a decade now. Let's look at some of the states that gained congressional seats. North Carolina gained a seat. That's the state that Obama won. Florida gained a seat, another state that Obama won. Georgia's gaining a seat. I think we're going to be up to 16 now. A state that where Stacey Abrams was nearly won in 2018, and Warnock and Ossoff won this year. Texas is gaining a seat, a state which many people thought was going to be part of the blue wave in 2020. They're gaining seats. So the truth is that because of overpopulation, because of cold weather, because of now, I think most importantly, remote work. Now you don't have to be in Chicago or Detroit or New York in order to work. You can work anywhere on earth for one of these corporations, and also not be in freezing cold weather for half the year because of lower taxes and lower regulations. There was a point in time where my in-laws' house in Westchester, New York, even though it was paid off, the taxes per year were more than our mortgage at our house in Atlanta at the time. And their house was a two-bedroom house in Westchester. Our house was an 8-bedroom house in Atlanta. So when people from up north start seeing the American dream of land and property and those sorts of things, of course it's a draw to come down, but that's what those Republican legislatures are afraid of. The darkening and more diversification and the becoming a younger population start putting them out of business. And so this is when we start seeing all these voter suppression laws pop up, because it wasn't supposed to happen in 2020. They thought they had until 2024, maybe 2028 for it to happen. But because it hit now, they understand they're going to have to redistrict. They're going to have to gerrymander. We're going to have to start looking this moment, because the demographics are catching up to them. They really thought they was going to be until the 2040s when the singularity hit, where we become a majority-minority nation, where you have more black and brown people than white people in the country. That's now been moved up to the 2030s, sometime during that decade. So I think this benefits more progressive voices, younger voices, more diverse voices, more so than Republicans, because you're not going on college campuses and seeing a bunch of acolytes for Mitt Romney and John Boehner and Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell, so on and so forth. You're seeing them people interested in AOC. They're interested in Ayanna Pressley. They're interested in Stacey Abrams. They're interested in Raphael Warnock and bringing those policies forward. So because you have more colleges, or you have so many colleges in the South, you have so many corporations relocating to the South, you're seeing this population boom there. And Republicans are reacting, instead of by trying to expand the base, but trying to restrict the number of people who can vote.
Kevin, Charles Blow, the columnist from the New York Times, he just moved from New York back to the South. He said, we need a second great migration. Indeed, Brian Stevenson, the executive director of the Equal Justice Initiative, who's going to be speaking at the Howard graduation. Thank you very much. Hello, Bisons, go, go, go. He talked about those of us who moved north, that we've really been refugees of exile and exiles of terror. I mean, because, after Emmett Till was lynched, black folks ran out of Mississippi. I mean, we just had these, and many of us would become successful. Look at Tulsa. We'd be pushed out of these communities, and now we're going back. And his point was, we need to go back. Black people in particular need to go back to the South for Black self-determination. We need to reverse this great migration to solidify political power. And this is something that you saw in the 80s during the Jackson campaigns. You and Reverend kept saying, our power is in the South. And of course, by 88, he swept the South, right?
Yeah, you're talking to me now because my phone had dropped. So I'm just coming in on the tail end of that.
Oh, no. I'm just saying that you and Reverend Jackson and others and Frank Watkins, Dr. Ron Walters,
I tell you,
have seen.
Santita,
Yes. Can you hear me?
Our dear friend, yes, I can hear you. Our dear friend who passed last month, Steve Cobble, and I used to get into these political conversations all the time about which is more important, organizing in the Southwest or organizing in the South. And I said, Steve, the South is where where the root of the problem started. It's where our people are, especially Black people. Steve was interested in forming that Black Latino coalition, Southwest coalition. But I said, everything in politics starts with your base. And so you start in the South, you start organizing the South. But the thing that has to happen with all this migration back to the South, which we talk about all the time, is organizing, organize. The old organizations, the new organizations have to come together with some sort of coherent plan to seize economic and political power in the South and to do political education. I always talk about the difference between the virtual and the material movement. The material movement is putting people in the streets, people in the suites, people holding politicians accountable regardless of what color they are, and having an agenda, not moving back to the South so they could just be pushed off their land, out of their areas and out of their communities, while developers get the lion's share of the resources. That's what we're fighting here now.
Well, where do we go from here? Because we're seeing the headlines today say, that this is where Trump won, and this is what's going to advantage him. And I said, wait a minute, not with all these people I know who are moving back to the South. I don't think so. And not with Stacey Abrams on the verge, Robert Patillo, of becoming, my goodness, the governor. We just got Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff. Even have Tim Scott. I know some Black people voted for Tim Scott because they like him, right, Kevin?
Well, I'm going to let Robert go first.
Okay, Robert. Robert.
Well, just think about throughout the South. You had Espy running in Mississippi closer than I think anybody expected Espy to run in Mississippi. You had Gillum, who nearly beat DeSantis. I think lost by something like 2 percentage points in Florida. Jamie Harrison in South Carolina, who put up a good race against Lindsey Graham, where Lindsey Graham had to go on Fox News every night, dialing for dollars and begging for money in order to beat him. So throughout the South, we're seeing a Black wave because the demographics, I've been studying this for close to, if not right around 20 years at this point. The demographics have never matched the electoral outcomes in the South. The reason being because of things like we see the voter suppression law here in Georgia. We started this back in 97. It just got more intense every time they cycle it through. 97, you could bring your light bill, your water bill to come vote. By 2005, they were charging $20 for you to be able to vote. They got struck down as a poll tax. So then they required a state-issued photo ID in 2006. 2011, cutting down the number of early voting days, cutting down the number of polling places that you can go to, those sorts of things. Then get to 2021. Now we're cutting drop boxes and saying you can't bring water to people in line. It's a constant effort where you try to get the laws to outrun the demographics throughout the South. But now with this number of people, the influx of people coming, it's becoming more and more difficult for those old Dixiecrats to continue to control the South. And they're not at a age or a financial condition where they can just get up and move. So they're going to suffer suffer from what they've been afraid of for the last 150 years, and that's going to be Negro rule. And the scary thing is, like we said yesterday, the most dangerous animal is a wounded animal. And right now, when they see the writings on the wall for them and their political movement, when they see they have not grown their base, they've done nothing to bring new, young, and diverse voices into their political party. They are still the party, as Lindsey Graham said, of old white men that they're not making fast enough to keep them politically significant. That's when people get dangerous when it comes to public policy, and why we need to be more vigilant than ever right now as we go through this transition process in America.
Kevin Gray, what should we be doing now?
And
yes,
we need to be monitoring reapportionment in these state legislatures. And we need to be organizing folk like Attorney Robert Patillo and ACLU and the National Black Lawyers Committee and all those people that can oversee, I use that word, oversee, what's happening in these state legislatures when they start redrawing these lines and the negotiations that have to go on for the redrawing of these lines and who participates and having some sunshine on that process moving forward.
So where do we go from here? I mean, specifically, how do we get the word out about how important politics in the state legislature are? I mean, whenever people get an opportunity to run for the U.S. House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate, they do it. But I don't think we really know, Kevin, just how important the people control state politics are.
It's not like people can't know. We came up in an era where we all participated in those processes in various ways. As I said, I participated in reapportionment through the ACLU, through Fair Share of South Carolina. And that's why I keep saying those organizations that do oversight, that have traditionally done oversight, NAACP, they have to get involved and they have to do the public education and the community organizing on these issues. We can't wait for CNN or MSNBC or not even our radio shows and the places that we speak to. We have to get the organizations that have protected our interest remobilized, and they have to do public education.
So where are we with public education, Robert Patillo? Because Kevin is speaking of, maybe a couple of generations back, at least a generation back from you. What about the education? Because I can say this, and Kevin and I know this, and so do you, Robert Patillo. You started working for Reverend Jackson when you were in college. This requires all day, every day work, 7 days a week, 24/7, 365. You cannot stop educating. You cannot stop inspiring. You cannot stop trying to move the needle. It takes that kind of work.
You're absolutely correct. And I think what we're seeing now in America is the result of 30 years of allowing the assistant football coach and the gym coach to teach civics and social studies in America. Because we have a country which is completely devoid of civics and social knowledge and understanding of how this system works. Just go down to the bus stop right now and ask anybody what the three branches of government are, how bicameralism works, how does a bill become a law, who is in charge for the problem that you currently have, because everyone in America believes the president is the only level that can answer the problems, and that's where they look to for solutions. We got to have a more educated populace that understands the game that is afoot, because we spend a lot of time each election cycle just trying to do the voter education part of this and letting them know what the game is that's being played. And before we can even get to the point of solutions, that's how you control the populace, by keeping them uninformed and unable to articulate what their problems are and who can fix those things. That's how oligarchs stay in power, by propagandizing the public as opposed to educating the public. So it's going to be the duty of civic-minded groups and civic-minded individuals to particularly get in there with our young people, because what our young folks are seeing now is that, look, we've seen people talking and hemming and hawing for generations, but when we got out there and took over a few cities, all of a sudden we're starting to see verdicts politics that are reflecting the will of the people. All of a sudden, we're starting to see public policy, which is reflecting the will of the people. We're seeing corporations at least give lip service to the will of the people, and now we're starting to move on into action with their dollars and with their deeds. So when you get an educated populace, particularly young people, particularly that under 40 class, that are going to be out in those streets banging on tables and disrupting things for political change, that's how you move the ball forward in a system instead of simply running on a treadmill, which is what the power structure wants us to do.
Well, you know what? Let me ask you this. Medi Rodriguez has a question. Will the reverse migration change the color of the states that are presently blue? Blue voters leaving blue states, and Chicagoland are blue while the rest of the state is red. And it's a moderate Republican state, Medi. I mean, this is not a right-wing Republican state. And in fact, just a little touchstone of history, Black people historically have been able to we've had more space with Republicans in the state of Illinois because the Democratic Party was so, well, tyrannical. So talk to us, Kevin. What about blue states? What about losing traction in blue states? Is it worth it? Is it strategic even? I mean, because the cost of living in the South certainly is far more affordable. You can live better in the South. Let's just put it where it is. But do you think we should be thinking strategically?
Oh, boy, that's a hard question. It's kind of hard. I mean, listen, even as we've been talking and looking at this Trump phenomenon and Republican voters, I think you almost, you don't just work on one track, and that's organizing your people and educating your people. You try to bring people over from the other side, too. And I think a lot of the complaints and a lot of the angst or fear that Republican voters have is not just about Black people. Now, a lot of it is, but some of it is just about the system and how the system has been unfair, and how capitalism as a system and corporatism as a system has diminished their rights as well. So there is, as Reverend used to say, some common ground that we ought to be trying to see with even people that we think we politically disagree with, because in some respects, we talk about educating our own people. The people that are politicized by the other side are miseducated themselves, and I think we also have to just educate the community at large about what may be or could be the future of our country. The future ought to be, as Dr. King once said, the beloved community. How can we get along? How can we become a more civil society? How can we look at priorities of government? I hire people, and it's tough to hire people in this new COVID assistance era. But then again, people always needed that aid. And if we stop spending so much money at a national level on defense, so much money on a local level on police and law enforcement, and give real aid to people and give a real future to people, then I think we can change some people's minds.
So I'm going to close out with you. Well, I've got a couple of minutes here. Attorney Robert Patillo, of course, hosts his own show on WAOK, the iconic Black talk radio station down in Atlanta, from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time every Sunday. You're one of the hosts who talks to everybody. I mean, you're going to talk to the Bernie supporters and the Trump supporters. Kevin brought up, maybe we should start building some bridges and find out what we might have in common and work from there. What say you?
You're completely correct on that. I actually got to send you the clip from last night's town hall. We had a town hall on the future of the Black vote last night. And so we had a former candidate for Georgia Secretary of State, D. Dawkins Hagler, who you've been on with before, former candidate for Georgia Public Service Commissioner Daniel Blackman, but also former congressional candidate for Maryland, Kim Klacik, and a Republican strategist, Malik Abdul. And many of the things are places where we can agree as Black folks. Black folks don't have different issues on different sides of the aisle. We have different solutions on different sides of the aisle. And I think it's very important for us to have people work in both angles. We don't need to be in one pot, because what we've seen is the Democratic Party was way out there up front with black folks going into November, way out in front with black folks going into January 5th for the Senate runoffs. But now we're starting to see that same creep again, where we say, well, we're going to address black folks' issues, but we got to do stimulus first. We're going to address black folks' issues, but we got to address the vaccine first. We got to do black folks' issues, but now we also have to talk about the infrastructure bill first. And I think in the black communities, we're starting to say, like, no, I want to be at the front of the line this time. Don't put me back at the back of the line like you do every other time. So when you have people competing on both sides of the aisle for you, it's more difficult for anybody to take advantage of your vote. So I think we're going to have to start building those bridges, agree where we can agree, and work on those things first. And then we'll work on the things we can disagree on afterwards. Those are always going to be there. As almost like a marriage or a relationship. Like, look, let's get the light bill paid first, and then we can work on this other stuff that we're mad about. But let's keep the lights on, the mortgage paid, and get those things done. And then we'll work on this whole text message situation we got going on over here.
I've got a final minute, Kevin. It belongs to you. This great migration.
What can I say after that? I don't know what I can say. That was great. That was great. Sometimes you ought to just say ditto or here,
No,
or
but why was that great? Because you also reach across the aisle and you reach out around. You talk to a lot of people. You are someone who you're willing to have uncomfortable conversations in your comfortable space. Everybody comes to Railroad Barbecue in Columbia, South Carolina. Everybody. Because you talk to the Trumpers, you talk to the Bernie people, you talk to people who don't care about voting at all. The last minute belongs to you.
Well, as we've been saying, it's still going to always be about organizing and communications, and not seeing the person that lives in a neighborhood that you don't live in as your enemy. Not seeing somebody as who's black or white as someone that you can't talk to. It's about coalition building. It's about reaching out to people. It's about being consistent with your message and consistent as to who we are politically. But it also means to try to change the hearts and minds of those people who have been taught to fear us, to fear difference, to fear change, to fear the future. And it's got to be about building a stable, civil community for our kids, our grandkids, our great-grandkids, and everyone that comes after us. If not, this so-called experiment of America is not going to make it. No empire survives. It only with internal strife and internal conflict.
Absolutely.
So that's a final word.
Come together.
We got to come together. Yep.
Come together, everybody. Come together. Going to be talking about the adultification of black girls on the Santita Jackson Show back in just a minute. Kevin and Mark, Kevin and Mark. Kevin and Robert, you all were absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Really, that was it.
Thank you. You have a good day.
Oh, no. You know what? I want to talk with you about doing something, Robert.
Okay. Of course.
Yeah, I'm going to call you a little bit later today. I'm going to call you myself, not just text you.
All right, I'll be around.
Okay. Thank you so much. Kevin Gray, has he left already? Probably.
He dropped.
Of course. He's got a business to run. He's got a very, very successful barbecue restaurant down in South Carolina. If you ever go down there, you need to go. Dylan, you will love it. If you like barbecue. I don't know if you like barbecue, but it is fabulous. And it's like a civil rights, everybody's Railroad Barbecue in Columbia, South Carolina. It's like a civil rights museum. It's fabulous. He even has my grandmother's old American Express card embedded. Has all of this memorabilia. It's all over the walls. It's a beautiful place. And he has all of this, actual like memorabilia, actual different people's stuff. And he had these tables shellacked so you could lock these things in. And I was sitting at one of the tables and I looked up and saw Mrs. Helen Jackson. I said, "Is this my mama Helen?" Oh, almost made me cry, you guys. I said, "Oh, she was my heart. Bless her heart." Oh, make it away from me. I hope, Grandmama, I live well enough to join you up there one of these days. Not too soon. But everybody, we're going to be talking about the adultification the adultification of black girls. It's a real big issue, everybody, and it's getting our girls. Um, it's getting them arrested in school, and quite frankly, it's getting them killed. So we got to talk about that on the Santita Jackson Show. I've got several of my dearest, several people who are near and dear to me. Of course, Mrs. Chaparral Wells. Chaparral actually has an award-winning podcast. It's winning awards all over the country. It's one of the best podcasts out here. They've had more than 1 million downloads. Somebody, of course, you can get it through. You can get it where you can get podcasts, but of course, we first saw it on the Intercept, but more than 1 million downloads and counting. You don't want to miss it. And then, of course, attorney C.K. Hoffler, who's with us just about every day. We're so honored to have her, the president of the National Bar Association. Of course, she will be the largest and oldest black bar association in the world, really more than 65,000 black lawyers. But she will also be hosting her own show. She's on WAOK. So she rolls off of this show and goes on to her own at 10 o'clock Central Standard Time and 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Somebody told me to do Eastern Time. Okay, all right, I got you. I'm just accustomed to doing it the other way. And so we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about the adultification of black women. And I said, my special guest today is someone I'm always so touched when I speak with her because we go way back, you guys. I mean, like way back, like college way back, like who we met August 19, and that's why we were staying in the same dormitory. This is my girl, past president of the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Officers. When you hear noble, those are the law enforcement executives. She was the president of the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Officers, the people on the ground. So she's going to be able to walk through this, and she's got a son who's going to be going to Howard. Yay! Hello, Captain
Thank
Pruitt. How are you?
Hey, what's going on? I'm tired, girl. I was up all night writing an op-ed.
Okay. Yeah. Well, at least I know you can write. Hello.
Oh, girl, that's my thing right there. The book is coming. The book is coming.
Okay. Oh, you know what? I've got some books in me. I need to go on and do that, right? Woof,
We
woof.
waste time, and time ain't promised. We got to get it done.
Girl, I'm trying. I'm doing everything I can. You see, I wish you sell these papers I'm sitting up here holding today. Woo. But actually, I'm going to be. In fact, I'm going to come down to Howard in August because that's our anniversary, right? And do you remember Virginia Chappelle?
Yeah, it sure is. It's our 40-year anniversary. Oh my God!
Believe it? That's right. So she and I are going to come down. I think we should all meet down there. But of course, I'm sure the dormitory that we were in is air conditioned now because, of course, we didn't have an air conditioner. CK was over at Fancy George Washington, okay? But we were sitting up there in a dormitory where my mother got the biggest fan in the world. We propped open that window. I was like, I don't think I think the devil needs to come here to get a break because it is hot up in here.
Ice Wells here.
That's funny because I love radiator heat. We were cozy in the winter.
Now we were. And you remember when we put our
those
food
summers.
The summer, girl, that was horrible. Come on now. And remember when we used to put our food in the snow in the courtyard? Oh my God. Because Miss Hairston Williams was going to come and check because you were not supposed to have that toaster oven. You're like, yeah, right. Uh-huh. Then you had to put some of that stuff just to hide your meat so you could hold it. I never thought putting on my snow boots over my pajamas so I can run out into the woo. Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. Those were good times.
I rarely went into that courtyard. Had I known its historical significance, I probably would have gone out there more.
No, you wouldn't have. Honey, we were busy having we were busy having some fun. No, we were not that conscious. We were trying to be cute. Come on, keep it 100, girl. What? We were trying to be cute when those guys called the, what is it? Is that CK? Are you there?
I'm here.
CK.
I was rather enjoying.
Oh, no.
Hi. Good morning.
CK.
Good morning.
These guys in the springtime used to call. They used to have bomb threats. I'll tell you about it.
Good morning. Good morning.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson. This is WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. We took over the airwaves for Air America, and we have become really America's progressive talk radio station. And so we're glad to have you with us, joining us from everywhere on my Facebook, on WCPT's Facebook, and on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. And please continue to like and subscribe on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. And of course, AM 950 Radio. That is my home in Minneapolis, St. Paul, my home to the north, the voice of progressive Minnesota. We have got a lot to talk about today. Call me at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. GWC Entry Lawyers gives you the opportunity to text there, 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Let's talk about the adultification of Black girls. The adultification, making us, our girls, adults, making them really less than children, something other than children, when they're still children themselves. It makes them more arrestable, it makes them more killable. And we're going to talk about that because indeed many people, that came up when the mayor of Columbus, Ohio, referred to Ma'Khia Bryant as a young woman at 16. There was a sharp outcry. People said, no, she's not a young woman, she's a child. She's a child. And let us not forget that. We're going to be talking about this with this magnificent panel. But first, I want to get to some of these headlines so we can get right to this topic, everybody. Chicago, we're going to have a high of 81 degrees, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 57 degrees, and the rain and the stocks yesterday. Interesting. NASDAQ closed up 121 points. The Dow closed down 61 points. The S&P 500 closed up 7 points. And in Major League Baseball, the Twins and Cleveland faced off. Cleveland was triumphant 5-3 over the Twins. Atlanta bested Chicago in a squeaker 8-7. And the White Sox will be facing the Tigers tonight. Well, the U.S. population showed its lowest growth since really in about 80 years. 1930 to 1940 was the lowest growth of population in the United States. Now, this is the second lowest growth, only 7.4% increase. Many people are saying that this will advantage the Republicans. That's right, because we saw some growth in the South. But we're also seeing a great migration of Black people to the South, Asian people to the South, Latinx people to the South. So we will have to see. It remains to be seen what's going to happen here. Did you know that the public are voicing concerns over the J&J coronavirus vaccine? According to this post-ABC poll, fewer than 1 in 4 Americans not yet immunized against the coronavirus say they would be willing to get the vaccine made by J&J. That's fewer than 25% of Americans who need a vaccine, who want to get a vaccine. They're saying no to the J&J vaccine. We'll see how this all works out. And of course, the CDC is going to come out with some new guidelines today, and we're going to hear the president weigh in on those too. In the Middle East, Israel is examining heart inflammation cases that they're seeing in people who have received the COVID-19 vaccine. And there's a little bit of controversy. The vaccine maker, Emergent, the CEO, sold $10 million in stock before the company ruined the J&J doses. Ooh, that's not good. Oh boy. But did you guess what? We are on our way to Japan for the Olympics. But guess what their vaccine, guess how many people in Japan are vaccinated? Now, it is a country of more than 120 million people. Okay, it's not 50%. It's not 70%. Only 1/10 of 1% of Japan's population has been fully vaccinated with the COVID-19 vaccine. And there's a story behind that, and we're going to talk about that sometime in the next few days. Why did Congress bail out Utah for $1.5 billion? Well, in a pandemic, a lot of people needed money. The problem is Utah has had a $1.5 billion budget surplus. Did they need that $1.5 billion? Wow. Oscar ratings plunged dramatically, 60%. Only 9.8 million people watched. Why are people tuning out of the Oscars? I don't know, but they sure did do that, everybody. And hey, return those VHS tapes. There's a woman who neglected to return her Sabrina the Teenage Witch VHS tape 22 years ago. Do you know she's getting a criminal record? Karen McBride is getting a criminal record for felony embezzlement. Felony embezzlement. She discovered the charges earlier this month after she got married and applied for a driver's license under a new last name in Texas. She was told to call the Cleveland County District Attorney's Office in Oklahoma, which told her there was a warrant for her arrest. Unbelievable for failing to return the video of this children's show that records that she rented this in 1999. Come on, you guys. Ugh, it's too much. Everybody, let's talk about the adultification of these black girls. What happened with Ma'Khia Bryant? What happened with so many of these young people who have been, these girls, these black girls, who have been arrested in school? I mean, they've been 5 years of age, they've been 10, they've been 11, they've been 12. What is the adultification of black girls? And why is this such a big deal in our community? Why is it something that could get our children killed? Well, because people think that you're older than you are, they think you're stronger than you are, they think that you're less worthy, less needing of protection. And it happens to black girls every single day. And many people are saying that, you know what, this is what happened to Ma'Khia. Indeed, Columbus Mayor Anthony Ginther called her a young woman, and people became very, very angry because she was only 16 years of age. 16 years of age. The adultification of black girls has black girls facing harsher punishments in the criminal justice system. First of all, it's getting them pushed into the criminal justice system. There's a lot going on here. So we've got a tremendous panel who are going to talk with us about it. Of course, C.K. Hoffler, attorney C.K. Hoffler, the president of the National Bar Association, the largest and oldest black bar association in the world, more than 65,000 lawyers. In fact, she has her own radio show on WAOK in Atlanta. Of course, you can hear it worldwide. 11 o'clock Eastern Time today, 10 o'clock Central Time. And of course, a podcaster. I bet you didn't know Chappelle Wells is a podcaster. More than 1 million downloads, everybody. The Somebody podcast. You've got to hear it. It's a winning awards every time we turn around, and it's worthy of it because it's a brilliant podcast. And she's done a magnificent job with the Invisible Institute in pulling that together. And of course, we're going to bring up first my fellow Howardite. So proud of this young woman. Indeed, retired Captain Sonia Wiggins Pruitt. She is the past president of the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Officers. You bring to us a wealth of experience of police work, adultification of black girls that make they look to be more adult. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're kids. Captain Pruitt, what is this? Is this what happens with our black girls?
It does happen with our black girls. And good morning, everybody. Last week I was having a conversation with someone about the fact that how black women are treated by police. It makes me imagine that that's how they were treated as slaves, throwing them around, their breasts falling out, their dresses coming up. This is by the police now. Throwing our girls on the ground. And so we were having this conversation. So this is an apt conversation to be having about our actual young ladies because they too are treated that way by law enforcement, throwing them around like they're rag dolls, body slamming them to the ground. and then seeing them as being older than they really are. I think that is an inheritance from slavery, where they had our children up on the slave block, looking at them like they were objects to be used for breeding or something like that.
I want to talk with you about that because I was reading, me, I'm reading something all the time. This is a headline from the Washington Post, everybody. In Columbus, Ohio, police killed 16-year-old Makia Bryant. That fits a pattern. That's not a good. That's not a good sign, Captain Pruitt, Attorney Hoffler, Mrs. Wells. Um, this death fits a pattern in which black girls, Sally Nuama writes. Black girls are punished disproportionately for ostensible offenses because of their race and gender. In January, an upstate New York police officer pepper sprayed a 9-year-old black girl. A 9-year-old black girl. In May 2020, a Michigan judge had a 15-year-old girl arrested and incarcerated because she did not complete her online schoolwork in the middle of a pandemic. In September of 2019, police arrested and fingerprinted it. Get this, everybody, wait for it. A 6-year-old black girl for kicking a staff member at her school in Orlando. U.S. police arrest, jail, and assault black girls regularly with little national fanfare. Wow. A 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 15-year-old, now a 16-year-old. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, what's going on here?
Well, Santita, I am stunned by this, but I shouldn't be because I actually represented that 6-year-old.
Oh, wow.
She was handcuffed. She had a meltdown in school. She was a 6-year-old, second grader, having a little meltdown like kids do. And the principal approached her and tried to discipline her. Teacher couldn't discipline her, and they were trying to grab her, and she was fighting back with her little hands. She was about 35 pounds, and so they called the law enforcement on campus, and 3 big police officers restrained her, put handcuffs on her, and then they put her in the back of a police car. She was calling and crying for her mom, and put shackles on her feet, on her ankles, like she was going to the slave trade, and wouldn't let her mother see her. Her mother sat outside of the car crying, and she was crying, and they wouldn't let her mother hold her. Her mother sat out there for 3 hours trying to touch her baby. Now, while the police tried to Baker Act her, so in Florida, there's a statute, it's called the Baker Act, and that's when you try to institutionalize someone for, involuntarily for whatever behavior. This child had a meltdown, and all these grown people who didn't look like her were trying to restrain her. Oh, yes, it's tragic. Jaisha Scott is her name. And in fact, your dad, Santita, weighed in on this issue very strongly. And that is tragic. A 6-year-old, a baby, she had just turned 6.
So she was really 5 and some change. I mean,
she was 5 and some change. She was 5 and some change. So what do I say about that? That was a lesson for me because it was really the unthinkable. And at that time, my kids were like 2 and something meltdowns all the time. I was like, oh my goodness, because the kids have meltdowns. That's what children do. I hate to say it. And do we need to speak? My kids were at a Montessori school. I cannot tell you, and they were the only black children. I think there was one other black child. I can't tell you the number of meltdowns that I saw, I witnessed of white children. But there was no police call, nobody called, because it's not appropriate to call police on kids having a meltdown. It's not good. It's not great. Your children will embarrass you when they're younger. Go out in public and have a little meltdown. You have to, tighten them up however you do it. Some people, verbally, other people, but a meltdown is not an odd and unusual thing. And it was because, in my impression, she was a young black child, a baby. That's why it happened. So this doesn't surprise me, but it distresses me because when I see so many, even young teenage girls being arrested, they may look older, but a lot of girls look older.
and they're arrested and treated like they are adults. So it's distressing.
And at 16, you want to look older. Let's be frank. You are very excited when at 14 when they think you're 18.
14.
Well, I mean,
Right.
of course that changes, and when you get to be 30. But that's another story for another show. But before I go to you, Mrs. Wells, let me come back to you, Captain Pruitt. Putting a 6-year-old in shackles and in handcuffs, and then putting her in the back of a car. Is that a proper procedure? Okay, I just want to know. Maybe it's Florida. I don't. Just help me.
Oh,
come on.
Oh my God! So this was not the case of a young lady or a small child. This was the case of a little black boy in the jurisdiction I used to work in Montgomery County, Maryland. You all might have seen it on the news. He was 5 years old. And the police were called on him by the school because he just walked out the door. Well, he's 5 years old. Can somebody go find him? Why do you need to call the police? So the police get there, and it's a black male and a female officer. And they scream at this child, and he's crying, and they threaten to beat him, and all kinds of stuff. It was horrible. And so I am not surprised that our black children are being treated as though they are some sort of a criminal at such a young age, and especially our young ladies who we should be nurturing and showing the way as little women, not little women. I used the wrong word. As little girls, giving them a path of safety to womanhood. But we're not there when they are 6 years old, 9 years old, 15 or 16. We are not there yet. We all know what it was like. All of us black women know what it was like to be those little girls, those, teenagers. So where is the nurturing, and why is it? I think it is an unrecognized issue in law enforcement. Now, as a black woman, I recognize it. Okay, because all the aggression, the microaggressions that come against black women, I recognize it. But why are our police officers not recognizing it?
Wait.
Add that to the things that they don't do.
What about this case you just described? What happened to those black police officers? I mean,
what happened?
What?
What's
going on with them?
So here in Maryland, they try to. Why didn't they? So let's talk about that real quick, because I was disappointed in the police chief. Because he came out on the side of, training. You know what? You don't need to train grown folks on how to treat children. Do we need to do that? Do we need to train officers on how to treat children? Okay, let's say that we have to. Well, then do that. Because it was an unsuccessful endeavor. And those officers, I don't know what their punishment was, but I think that both of them are still working. Nobody was fired. And it was a horrible incident. You can Google it because you need to see the video.
No.
So what I'm saying is, are we now going to, let's say I was a police chief. Do I need to have training for my officers on how to treat black children, and in particular, young black girls? Do I need to do that?
Yes.
Okay, maybe I'm just crazy.
No, I mean, I appreciate Val Demings. She's a great congresswoman. She comes out of Florida. She was a police chief for Orlando. When she was on Face the Nation this weekend, she said the officer who shot McKee responded as he was trained. He had to make a snap decision.
Okay, I'm sorry. Listen to what I got to say to y'all right now. And I'm going to say this out loud and publicly. I do not want to hear any more narratives about split-second decisions or good officers until leadership, and I mean police leadership, black police leadership, black politicians address the issues at hand. Until they show the good officers how they're going to handle the bad officers. Nobody has identified for me yet what a bad officer is. Do they live in like a bad officer house somewhere hidden? Because nobody wants the national SOP, police leadership are not identifying who these bad officers are. Who are they? What do they do? They're already talking about, well, Chauvin, he wasn't treated fairly. Really? That's a bad officer. So, respectfully to the Congresswoman, I'm just not interested in narratives surrounding good officers. We know that they're there. or split-second decisions, because it seems like split-second decisions are saved for white people and not Black people.
Well, you know
The
what?
benefit of that.
I got 2 minutes. The host of the podcast.
I'm sorry,
somebody,
y'all.
No,
This
no,
is my
no,
rant for the morning.
no. Please give it to us, because Chapearl loves rants. Chapearl Wells, because she does them too.
Yes, Santita, and thank you so much for having me on the show. I wanted to say what I have not heard from anyone in the media or the police force is that Ma'Khia Bryant was actually a foster child. She called and asked for help. She was being assaulted by 2 grown women, and they came to her house to fight her, a child. So I need to know, why isn't DCFS being investigated for this child's death? Why isn't the 2 women that were fighting Ma'Khia, why aren't they arrested? I need to know those things, because we're trying to demonize Ma'Khia and say, well, she had a knife. Hell, she was defending herself. We don't know what occurred before the officer actually approached the home. We don't know what was going on. We know that there was a phone call stating that they're trying to attack me. And so at this point, where she was, having stand the ground law, she was standing her ground. Now, you done killed her because she was defending herself. We need to talk about this, Santita. We need to explore the other parts of this story that are still being hidden by the officials in that area.
Well, and we're going to do that, because indeed that's going to help us to dig down in the weeds on the whole foster care system, because the 2 girls who are allegedly came to the house to attack her were actually coming home. They were her foster mother's daughters. There's a lot going on here. But what about the adultification of these Black girls, where they're seen as older? They need less nurturing. They need less protection. They need less support. They need less comfort. They are more independent. They're sassier. They're angrier. They're saucier. They know more about adult topics. They know more about sex. They really are not children. There's a brilliant study out of Georgetown, the Georgetown Law Center. It came out in 2017. Girlhood interrupted. It seems that Ma'Khia's girlhood was interrupted, and it's happening to Black girls everywhere, all over the country. Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820 in Chicago and AM 950 Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Back in a minute. Oh, you all are great. You make my life so easy. Yes.
Miss Chapearl, is that how I pronounce your name?
The mic.
Oh, look, is she crazy? Don't you all love it?
Yes,
you know what?
Yes.
Do you all want to do something like this?
That was great.
Wasn't it? Do you all want to do something like this on Clubhouse? Are you on Clubhouse, Sonia?
I'm on Clubhouse.
I just got on it, okay, and I haven't done anything with it. You are, CK, are you on Clubhouse?
Now, you know what had happened was...
You didn't pay attention to that. You didn't pay attention to your invitations. You didn't.
What happened was, I've been invited. I am on Clubhouse. Don't know how to really, how it goes.
Either.
I really don't know the I get all these things pop up, and by mistake press the button. Easy. Stop people from talking. I was like, oh my God! I was in the middle of something, and I pressed something, and people started talking about all kind of crazy stuff, and I couldn't figure out how to turn it off. I just turned off my phone. So I hope other people aren't hearing
yes, they
the
are.
level of lack of sophistication.
No, just mind you, Sonia, she's also a rapper in her other life. Okay, believe it or not. It might just be one song.
Y'all are funny.
Girl, look, I saw this girl. There is videotape evidence of this girl doing Rapper's Delight. Yes.
Oh, not Rapper's Delight.
Come on,
Rappers.
Sonia, that's the one
we all do Rapper's Delight.
Come on, don't front, Sonia.
I want to talk to Miss Chapearl. Wait a minute, hold Miss Chapearl. You dropped the mic. Let me tell you something. I'm looking right now at a statement that I wrote about that incident, and I talked about her being a foster child and how she was treated. And I haven't sent it out yet. I was going to send it out today. But you hit all the nails on the head.
Before we go to the callers, can you all go to that, please? Because they're not talking about that.
Yeah.
They're not talking about
and the thing is, Santita, I have a 14 and a 15-year-old foster child myself. Mm-hmm. And so I know that their situation is different. And so my thing is that who was accountable for her? Why wasn't she safe in that house? We have to unpack that. Because for a foster child, like if something goes on in my house, I'm going to jail. Because I am responsible. Once you take a child into your house, you are responsible for that child. So I need to know what kind of investigations have been done. What caused her? What kind of trauma was she being induced in? And by you saying, Santita, that these were the foster mom's children.
Yeah. So when the foster mother says, "I don't know what," you don't know what you don't know what she was living with. So when the foster mother says, "I don't know what happened here," I'm like, wait a minute now, your daughter's rolled up on this girl. But see, this is where the adultification comes in. Because when you're the adult, you are more responsible. You don't need the nurturing. You don't need the attention. You don't need the care. You're grown. You can handle this. No, you can't. You're 16. No, you can't. You're 5. No, you can't. You're 6. And everywhere you go, everybody assumes, white people in particular, assume that black girls are older, growner. You have an attitude problem. You're sassier. You're saucier. I'm getting static in the background, Dylan. What is that?
You're getting static?
I mean, it's just that.
I'm
not static, but it just sounds
interesting.
I hear that whenever I talk.
It's gonna be pretty.
Whenever you talk, I'm not sure why.
Okay, well that's something to investigate.
Okay.
So we're gonna come back to that. We're gonna come back to you, Pearl. Yeah, well, honey, I'm always trying to figure out what's going on because I want everybody. But I'd like to have this conversation on Clubhouse because I've never been there. Stay right there.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Boy, we are getting things cranked up, just like I thought we would. The past president of the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Officers, retired Captain Sonia Wiggins Pruitt, my fellow Howardite, we lived in the same dormitory. Wow, girl, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. My girl, I'm so proud of you. And of course, I am so proud of attorney C.K. Hoffler. Her show is going to be on today on WAOK, on that iconic talk radio station down in Atlanta. And of course, she starts at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, 10 o'clock Central Time. She's the president of the National Bar Association, the largest and oldest black bar association in the world, and she's chair of Rainbow Push. And of course, the podcast host. What is it? The Somebody podcast, more than 1 million downloads, 1.3 million downloads, by the way, and counting. Our own Chapearl Wells. Mrs. Chapearl Wells, you know what? You had a mic drop moment. That is what Captain Pruitt said. She said, whoa, hold on. The great elephant in the room, before we even go to the callers, you said, wait a minute. I mean, this young child was a foster child. And the people who came in on her was the foster mother's daughters, who were upset that she was not cleaning the house the way she was, even though she was known for doing chores and being very, very clean. There's a lot going on here, Chapearl. But by being adultified, we don't need to think about that because she can handle it, right?
Yes, Santita, and that's what they feel. They feel that this child could actually handle that. When you're in foster care, you're going through a lot of emotional trauma, just being separated from your family. And then you're supposed to be put in a household that is supposed to try to reverse some of that, to give you that sense of security and protection. And so what we find that is sometimes in these foster care systems, in some of the homes that you're placed in, that it's the actual opposite. Sometimes you're actually in a worse position than when you were at your own family. And so the thing is that this child was fearful. She was scared. She called police. She wanted help. And so she was at the point that she was defending her life. We don't know how many times these girls beat her up or did anything to her.
Well, we don't know what happened.
We don't know if there was sexual abuse. We don't know anything.
Well, hold on.
But for her, I heard her bio mom actually saying that she was not a violent person. She was very kind and nice. So something triggered. So we need to unpack that, Santita.
Well, something triggered her being in the foster care system in the first place. So there's a lot going on there. Hannah Parker said, why would we hold a foster mom responsible for the actions of a 16-year-old girl and not hold the mother of a 17-year-old responsible for driving him across state lines to walk down a crowded street with a patrol rifle like Kyle Rittenhouse? You want to speak to that? Since, many of your fellow officers are giving him money because, this young man. And Dylan Roof, your other fellow officers took Dylan Roof after he killed everybody in Mother Bethel in the iconic black church down in South Carolina. Well, they took him to Burger King because he was hungry before they went and booked him. Something's going on in your profession, girl. I don't know what it is.
It's something that's deeply seated, and it's got deep roots and history and tradition, and we are not addressing it in this country. We don't want to talk about systemic racism or biases, but they are alive and well. I mean, in the last few years, then let's talk about how they found that there were white nationalists in police forces. We're not surprised, right? I mean, that's been since time untold. That, come on now. But what are we doing about it? Nothing. And y'all reading my statement, the statement I told you I was working on, I talk about Kyle Rittenhouse and how he walks up to the police with an assault rifle. He didn't get shot. They gave him a bottle of water and a blessing.
Yes.
And now he's getting financial and moral support from police officers.
Wait. His
We're
mother
not
drove
do anything
him.
about that.
Wait a minute, his mama drove him. No, Captain.
Mama is sitting back. Ain't nothing happened to her. Can you imagine if that had been one of our children? What would happen to us? I mean, can we be real? The audience who's listening, let's look, see with a third eye. This is not okay. It's not okay.
Let me go. Mama D, what's on your mind today? This is a whole lot. Why did I do this early in the morning?
Greetings.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much for taking my call. I'm certified in Montessori education. Somebody brought that up earlier. But I attended a workshop at Operation Push, and they covered this topic. And I'm so glad you're bringing it up because over a decade ago, a little 5-year-old having a meltdown was put in handcuffs and taken to jail, yelling and screaming. And recently, the little 7-year-old that was killed waiting in the McDonald's drive-through, they called her on the radio, a young lady. Oh, it just drives me nuts. What is a woman, a lady, have to do with a 7-year-old? And also, when they were manhandling a police officer, I don't know if he made the little 9 or 10-year-old, but the officer told her, stop acting like a child. And she told him, she said, I am a child. And that is just how we that black stockings, jewelry hanging down, red lipstick everywhere. And they said no matter what age this black child was, she was sexually ripe. And this has been going on for some time. In conclusion, Maxine Waters called Dylan Roof, who's age 22, a boy. But yet, they are calling out, they never called Laquan McDonald a foster child who was 17. They didn't refer to him as a boy. They never people. Do you think one of the problems is the misuse of language? If you say kid, then you're all the way from a baby to those men playing basketball or baseball.
Sure.
So if we use the correct words like a baby, child, infant, teenager, adolescent, maybe that would cut some of that out. What do you think?
Well, I mean, number I will get back to the callers. I mean, the fact is, I think that Dylan Roof was relative to Maxine Waters. He was a boy, and I don't. So I mean, I don't think that I think no one is clearer on these issues than Maxine Waters. So I don't have a problem with her saying that. I have a problem with our black children. Because see, that meant because by making him youthful, it's just like Mark Zuckerberg. He walks around in a hoodie and jeans. He is a very, very grown man, but because he looks younger, we don't think that this is one of the most ambitious and richest people on earth and one of the most powerful. Boom. I'm saying stop adultifying our children and specifically our girls. Think that we need to get the language right. You're absolutely right. And when we get the language right, because even Dr. Carl Bell, we're going to let Mama D go. Dr. Carl Bell, brilliant psychiatrist who just made his transition a year ago. We love Dr. Bell. No one was a greater advocate for our children, for our people, than all people, than Dr. Carl Bell. He said, look, write off just about anything a child does until they're 25, because your brain literally does not come together. You don't really reach the modicum, just a baseline of maturity until you're 25. So it's something to think about. Let me go to Stephanie. What's on your mind, Stephanie?
This isn't new. When I was a freshman in 1974 in a Chicago high school, we had a girl who was very pregnant, probably weighed 120 pounds pregnant. And she was crying and upset. Everything was upset. And she was having hormonal issues because she was pregnant. Some girl told her she needed to shut up all that crying, and she would go over there and smack her. And the girl kept saying, just leave me alone. Yeah, I need everybody to leave me alone. And, she was just upset. And the girl went over there and smacked her. So the girl smacked the girl back and tried to defend herself. The cop in the school went over there, grabbed the pregnant girl, and threw her up against the wall. And then, and she got up, he threw her again, and she was fighting him because she got tired of being thrown up against the wall. And he arrested her for assault, resisting arrest. Mm-hmm. And her mother couldn't see her for 24 hours. I knew her sister, and they said that, I said, how did it go? The baby was okay. But her sister, she said, was emotionally and psychologically messed up. They took her out of school and tried to homeschool, and it didn't work. I saw another friend of mine who lived in my neighborhood who got into it with another young lady. Oh, and by the way, the policeman told her that, she was pregnant, she was grown, and she should have known better. And the other girl was walking down the street, some girls jumped on her. And so to get away, she picked up a brick and threw it at them because it was like 4 or 5 of them. They arrested her for assault with a deadly weapon, attempted murder, and her mother had to put their house on mortgage to get a lawyer, to defend her.
Well,
this cop that was at the school, the high school I went to, he was sent to another school.
Yeah.
He continued to do the same thing.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. Captain Pruitt, why don't you respond to that? I mean, look, adultification, we're not bringing this up, Stephanie, as if it's anything new. Black women, black girls have been adultified since we got on these shores because we were forced into intimate relationships when we were children. Do you remember, what was it, the movie about Nat Turner, Birth of a Nation? When they went and when they were leading the rampages on these white slaveholders and the white supremacists. At one point, when they ran in on one guy, he was in bed with a black girl with a child. She was his bedmate. I mean, there were a lot of things that Nate Parker dropped in that film. You all need to see it a whole lot of times, because this is the adultification of black girls is nothing new. But it's something that while I have this microphone, I certainly want to address it. Because now that we have a Captain Sonia Wiggins Pruitt retired, we can address it. Now that we have an attorney, C.K. Hoffler, now that we have this brilliant podcaster, Chappelle Wells, we can address it. Have at it, Captain Pruitt, and then, then C.K., and then you too, Chappelle. Please go for it.
I don't even know what to say or how to feel. It's a bit triggering for me. Having been bullied growing up and not receiving any protection from the local police force in my small North Carolina town. Having grown men looking at me as though I was a woman when I was only a young lady, 15, still trying to find my way in the world and let my brain develop but hypersexualization. Just, looking at, and so when I see my police officer peers, now I have to admit, none of the people that I work with that I can remember, I ever saw doing that openly. But when I look at these cases across the country, it's scary. It's scary to see a 15 or 16-year-old girl picked up and body slammed while she's wearing a swimsuit. Y'all remember that case? I think that was Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not seeing this as a child. And so you have now given me another mission to start taking a closer look at these cases, because I don't think I personally have been giving them enough attention in the things that I do. And so now I get to use my platform, Santita, just as you do, to bring attention to these issues, because they're really crucial. And it concerns not only the development of our children and our teenagers and girls, but also the development of the entire Black community. So it's really worth this attention, and I'm glad that you brought it up today.
Well, and if Black people are hurting, everybody's eventually going to hurt. Nobody's advantaged when anyone is disadvantaged. It is not a good thing. Before I get to you, C.K. Hoffler, what's your reaction, Chappelle, because you are a foster mother. And you are dealing, not only have you, of course, I gave a shout out to your daughter, who is a magna cum laude graduate of Illinois State University. C.K., her daughter's trying to go to law school. We need to connect the two of you because she needs a mentor, and she wants to be mentored by you, C.K. Hoffler. So we've got to get this young legal eagle to be to you. So congratulations to this baby. But Chappelle, so you've raised your children to maturity. They've done well. You've had a son who's been killed. We're trying to find out where the police intersected with that. But you're also still taking in these children who are in trouble, who need stability, who need the love. When you see Makia, what does that do to you?
Yes. I mean, Santita, it breaks my heart. But, just like, we all know as Black mothers, the conversations we have with our Black sons. But ironically, we're having those same conversations with our Black daughters as well. I still tell my daughters as they were growing up, and I also tell the girls that I'm raising in my home, you have to appear a certain way. Don't look too sexy. Don't wear this type of outfit. This is too grown for you. You need to change your outfit. We're having those type of conversations because the way the world sees you, you may look in the mirror and say, oh, I look fine. I don't look too provocative. But the way the world sees you, they see you as an adult. They see you as someone who's being fast. They see you as someone who's easy. And so when you see what happened with Makia, because she was defending herself against adults, they put her in that category based on her taking the initiative to save her own life. And so we have to have these conversations with our children about it. And it's sad, Santita, that we have to, but we have to save them. We have every day I'm around here preaching about etiquette, about how you are supposed to respond to adults. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Don't get attitude. Let's count. Let's try. We have to tell our Black children this because they are killing us, Santita.
Well, you know what?
Because if we appear aggressive in any way, they're going to use it against us.
But you know what? I think
so. The first thing that I heard.
Yes. No, well, let me just say this.
No, the first thing that I heard.
Well, let me say this. You want to teach your children to have good manners because, number one, that's good child rearing. I don't have children. Let me just establish that because I have not had that talk with with my children, but my godchildren, because I don't have any children, but with godchildren, for sure. Nephews, for sure. Um, that having been said, I don't want to make these children timid. I want them to be mindful. I want them to be well mannered, but I don't want them to be afraid. And I think that's part of the challenge, Chapearl, right now. I don't want these children to be afraid, or certainly I want them to have courage. Because what we're watching now is getting them killed. I mean,
Well, the thing is, Santita, I totally agree with you. We want our kids to be well mannered, but the thing is, our kids are dying because the narrative that the public is stating about our children, just like what they said about my son. Even though my son went to the police because he had been shot, they treated him as a suspect more than a victim, and it cost him his life. Because they saw the vision that America have of Black children, violent, combative, and unable to control.
And you know, it was his fault.
Even before you open your mouth, yeah, of course. Even before a child opened the mouth, just like when you name your child, if you name your child Shaniqua, then they may have a preconceived notion about who Shaniqua is. Shaniqua could be head of bar association. But because of her name, they have already made these lists of assumptions. And the same thing is what happens to all Black children, unfortunately. So that's why I'm saying we have to have these conversations with our children because we're Black. Because we can't do what white kids do. I tell my kids all the time, you can't do what white kids do.
Well, you know what?
You're going to have a different set of consequences.
Well, and also, I don't want them to do what white kids do. I don't want them to be Columbine murderers. I don't want them to be Dylan Roof. I don't want them to be the murderers in Pearl, Mississippi, and Paducah, Kentucky. I don't want you to follow that example. That's my point. My thing is, I want you to be right. Period. Period. That's it. Full stop. Period. Drop the mic on that. That having been said, I want our children to stop being so killable. I don't want our girls to be seen as less worthy of nurturing. I don't want because Makia was a little full that she is seen as a big old girl. I mean, I want to know why they didn't.
That's not even the kids. That's not even the kids' issue. These are adult problems.
But that's why I'm about to ask.
These are adult.
I'm about to ask Captain Pruitt, why not pepper spray? Well, not from the back. Why not a taser? Well, I mean, why 4 shots?
So here's the narrative. This is a great question. I'm in a couple of Black police groups on social media, and I was disappointed to hear so many officers say it was justified. It was a good shooting, as though she was just relegated to being just something like a dog just kicked in the dirt, and so I challenged some of them. I was like, this was a girl who was beset with the problems that teenagers have, and some more because of her foster status. Yeah. And so we can't just, make her into this bad girl because she had a knife. I said, I had a fight when I was a teenager with a bunch of girls who attacked me similarly, and I took one of their knives to protect myself. I said, imagine the police that come and shot me, and I'm over there trying to protect myself. So I get it, but you need to get it too as a police officer, and you are serving your own communities, many of you. And so when you go into them, are you of the mindset that this is the enemy because they taught you that in the academy? Are these young girls relegated to an academy term, justified, good shooting, and not seen as human and young and still developing and needing nurturing? Is that what this conversation is about? And they, some of them didn't get it. She had a knife and he was justified. Well, justified doesn't mean necessary. Police have discretion for a reason. There are other things. And some of the older officers were like, you know what? I would have probably went over there and grabbed her, or I could have used my pepper spray, or I might have tased her. But I wouldn't have pulled my gun. And so I am concerned about how we are developing as the police in this country, are we really, well, I'm going to just say it. The law enforcement is digging down into this justified thing and making it okay because you were taught it in the academy. Well, I contend that now we're going to put pressure, we're going to have to put pressure on this training piece, this training model, to change it so that you're not just justified just because the person had a knife in their hand and you saw them with the knife in their hand. I think you guys might have seen the video of a man who was shot in the street, just holding the knife, standing there. He didn't lunge at nobody. He was just standing there. Officer shot him square in the chest. So we got a problem.
Well, we have a problem.
I'm not gone a whole bunch of places, but this is
no. I want to know.
ridiculous.
I want to know if this is a Chauvin effect very quickly, because in the 24-hour period after he was convicted, 6 people were killed by police. I mean, it's like there's a killing spree right now. I've got about a minute before we go off air.
Okay. This is like domestic violence. When the abuser realizes that the abused person is leaving the relationship, they ramp it up. That's how I see this. There is pressure being put on policing right now, and some of these police officers don't like it.
The Chauvin effect. I got 30 seconds for you, CK. What are you going to be talking about today at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, 10 o'clock Central Time on your show, WAOK?
Well, we're going to be talking about all these killings, just an update, but we're also going to be talking about know your rights. Know your rights when you're stopped by the police. Know your rights in a workplace because of COVID. Know your rights when you're sexually harassed in a workplace. And know your rights if you're stopped for an immigration issue. So the focus is know your rights. But we always update on what's happening in the country with the shootings and all of that.
Whew. Chapearl, the host of the Somebody podcast, the last 30 seconds belong to you. And everybody, will be on Santita Jackson and Friends on Facebook Live. We'll bring it down just a little bit, Dylan. Chapearl, your last thought?
I just want to encourage everyone to definitely tune in to Somebody. You can find us anywhere where you get your podcast or theintercept.com. Thank you, Santita.
Is that all you wanted to say? Well, okay, everybody, Somebody podcast. But stay right here. We're going to be talking just a little bit more on the Facebook, on my Facebook page, on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, and on my new YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show channel. Everybody, let's talk about this. We've got to save our girls. We talk about saving our boys, and we should. But our girls are in trouble. And we've been struggling since we've been on these shores. And we cannot ignore our girls. There's an old expression in the Black community. We love our sons. We raise our girls. Well, you know what? Let's love them both, and let's raise them both. And let's raise everybody. Okay? Let's get well together, everybody. Remember, red, yellow, black, brown, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. And let's treat each other that way. We're all God's children, which means we're all brothers and sisters and brothers. I love you, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Hey. We're still on Facebook Live, you lovely ladies. Hello? You all there?
Hi, Santita. Hello?
Yes.
Santita.
Yes.
Just one thing I just wanted to, and I don't know if we covered this, but it's very interesting. I've had a discussion with young teenagers, because I have teenage sons, and a group of them just to see what they thought about the shooting. And there are some of them that feel that the police didn't have a choice. These are Black teens. The police didn't have a choice, and others were like, of course the police had a choice. So it's very interesting, even amongst young folks who are close in age to that young woman, there's some feelings. And this is from a group of kids who also feel traumatized because of all the shootings and killings and going off to college and wondering what that will hold and how they're going to be safe.
But you know what I would have to put into that? I mean, and look, maybe I'm off here. I'd have to put colorism into that too. Because I think that if she were lighter and slighter, we'd have a different view of Makia. I'm just kind of putting it out there.
Well, you know, I don't know with that group. I have to tell you, for me, it wouldn't have made a difference. But I think you're right with some other people, and with the group of kids, for them, they felt that they're going to get traumatized no matter what they do.
But I'm just saying perception, right? Because
right. And that's what they feel. I offered them another perspective. I said, do we know? Because some of them were saying, well, I mean, all we can do is trust what we see. Because they picked that up from Chauvin trial. These young people think they're analytical and stuff. We trust what we see. I said, but it's not the full picture. And that's what we have to look at. We don't know what happened before. Why would a child, just imagine what state of mind you would be in if you're calling the police to have them save you. The police that you believe, just based on what you just said, are killing our people, killing you all. You're going to call the police to save you. What's going on for you to do that? They were like, you know what? I hadn't thought about that. I said, yeah, you hadn't thought about that. And that has to be factored. We need to hear the full story. And by the way, do you all believe that if she had been a young white girl, she would have been shot 4 times? And they said, absolutely not. I said, so right there, you've got your answer. But my point is that taking children, you have to take children through that analysis because they're going to buy the hype because they watch TV. They're on TV. They're on their phones. That's how they watch TV. And they hear all this discussion.
See,
so as parents, we really have to.
No, not to interrupt you. Just say right here, because the only reason I brought color into this is because of some of the things I've heard about Kamala Harris. I've heard more black men say to me, and when we were in the vice presidential stakes, right? Wow, well, I think Stacey Abrams would be like fantastic. They were like, and several of these men who I know said to me, I'd never date Stacey. So what does that have to do with her being on the ticket?
That's a whole nother issue.
Their brains are still developing, right?
No. These are grown men. Babe. Sorry.
These are grown men.
Right. That's what I mean.
And she said their brains are still developing.
and I'm just saying that even remember the blonde-haired, slightly built, a very attractive white teacher who was supposed to go to jail, but they said she was too cute to go to jail. Remember that a few years ago? I'm only trying to bring this stuff in because all of these things do matter, right? I mean, I'm not saying they're right, but I'm saying, we have to, I think if we're going to look at this, I think we better look at it all.
Well, no, I agree. I think we have to look at all of it. And that was my point with these kids.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to have the debate and dialogue because they're going off to college and I want them to have this discussion. I remember when I was in college, what we did is we discussed issues, political issues, etc. And we would be, very robust and might leave a little bit angry. But college is a place where you do that. And that's why you have a lot of college students protesting for one thing and another, because that's a time when you do that. Now, of course, if you're in a state that is outlawed protesting, that is something else, because all those kids are going to be arrested. And some of them are just willing to do that because they feel that it's important to protest and to speak truth to power. But no, it's just interesting to hear how kids who are thinking about that perceive that. And I think a lot of it, too, depends on what your experience is. If you've not experienced a level of urbanism or diversity or trauma, real trauma in your life, the trauma is what you see on TV, George Floyd being killed. The trauma is, Breonna Taylor. The trauma is Ahmaud Arbery, because you can relate to that. The trauma is being stopped by a police. That's the trauma that a lot of kids might experience. But if you live in a situation where you see trauma every day, and that's part of your life on the corner or in your neighborhood, you have a different perspective. If you're in foster care, which I think is very relevant, that's the narrative that we have to look at. If you're in foster care and you're living in a certain situation, she had to fear for her to take a knife. She had to fear for her life, I'm imagining, for her to pick up a knife and feel she needed to defend herself.
She called the police.
And that's the narrative. Right, and I want to know, I want to hear, not part of it, but the complete tape. What did this child say when she called the police? What did she say? Because we talk about training. Part of the training is the triage, listening to coming into the situation. What could they have done? What should they have done? I think they had 10 other options, and I'm not a law enforcement officer, but they had at least 10 other options of things they could have done coming into the scene, knowing the information that they knew, coming upon what they saw to stop this. And they didn't do that. And that's where I think I disagree with those who say, well, that's what the training, he did what he supposed to do according to training. No. And by the way, no. Because if that had been a white child, would we have been saying, well, that's how they're trained? The training is no. And we know the answer is a resounding no. So if the answer, and until the answer to that question is yes, then we know there's been an abuse of force. There's excessive use of force. Until the question, when asked the question, would the same result have obtained if this were a white child, a white woman, a white man? If the answer is yes, then perhaps, not for sure, but perhaps there's not an abuse of force. If the answer is no, for certain there's been an abuse of force. And I would dare say all those people who say, oh, that's who was trained, did the right thing, would answer, probably not if it were a white child, or no. So that's how I see it. So when we talk about policing reform, that's what it is. There it is. Until we are answering that question across the board, yes, universally, or no universally, for all people, not some, not people, then we have a problem.
You are saying all the things that I have been saying in the last few days. And what's disappointing for me, again, is that Black officers are they keep falling back on this, well, that's how they were trained. Nobody wants to talk about police discretion because, we don't have to do, well, I'm not the police anymore, but police do not have to always act in a certain way. Okay, there's wiggle room. There's a vast amount of wiggle room, which is why discretion is so important. Being taught in policing courses all over this country, in colleges, discretion is very key to much of what law enforcement does. And you are right in that there was no discretion used in this particular situation, yet we see time and again that discretion is being used with white children. Discretion is being used with white people. We act like we don't see it, but where are the videotapes of white people dying at the hands of police like Black people are?
Is it distraction?
And so I need some evidence.
Well, let me ask you, discretion I think is being used. Care isn't being used, right? Our children are not being cared for.
Both of those things.
Because they're making, you're right, because they're making these judgments. And I'm just trying to figure out why 4 shots? Why 4 shots? If she's holding it.
4 shots, you're trying.
I don't understand.
You're trying to kill the person.
Yeah,
you're
part of the training. Part of the training. We can use training to hold officers accountable, but they also use training to justify what officers do. If you are training officers that you are shooting to kill and that you shoot until you feel like the threat has been extinguished, then that's why 4 shots. That's why 16 shots. I'm not defending it. I'm just explaining it.
But right, and that's why we have 40 shots. Well, I'm gonna say Diallo, 40 shots or 44 shots. Yes. And Santita, I wanted to clarify one thing while we're talking about this. There's been a discussion about this 5-year-old, 6-year-old. It's all the same child. Jaisha Scott, who I represented. She was 5, but some reports say she was 6. She turned 6 shortly after, but she was 5 years old, had a meltdown. It was in Pinellas County, Florida, which is by the Orlando area. It's all the same child. And so it's a seminal case because she was the youngest, and I think still is, the youngest child to be a victim of police brutality and excessive use of force. And in that case, we ended up settling the case because we brought suit against the school district as well as the police department. My expert was from Noble. So we used who broke it down into, how there was excessive use of force. But the venom, and by the way, the next week, I think within 10 days, there's a second case I had from that school. That school had a history of wanderers, or I think they called them wanderers, like kids would wander out into the street because they didn't have appropriate security. And so within a week, an 8-year-old boy ran out to the street and was hit and paralyzed for life. The same school. a little black boy. So that school, had some very significant issues. They didn't have sufficient security. They were, handcuffing kids for having meltdowns. And I did bring up the example of Montessori school because what I saw in my children's Montessori school, some of those kids were buck wild. I knew that was not the environment for my child. I'm not knocking a Montessori education. I think it's great on some levels for some kids. But some of the behaviors that I saw, and I recall that I was called into the office about an incident, quote unquote, involving one of my sons. The incident had to do with boys were playing tug of war. My son and another boy saw this truck they wanted to play with, and my son was 2. And so my son, who was bigger than every child almost in the school, grabbed the truck first. And then the boys, he and this other little boy were playing tug of war. And my kids were the only 2 black kids in their age group, certainly there. And so they were playing tug of war, and my son won and got the truck. Okay, so that was written up as an incident because the little boy fell or something, and then they all kept on playing. So that was an incident. So when we were called in about this quote-unquote incident, I said, okay, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. You are calling me in and saying that my son was overly aggressive at 2. And as you described it, there was a tug of war over a truck. And of course, he's bigger and stronger than the other kids in his DNA. And you're saying that was a problem. And so I gave her a schooling on what statistics were going to be. And her mouth just dropped open. And my husband just shook his head and said, y'all asked for it. Oh, wow. And I explained to her that the only statistic that we were going to have in that school relative to my child was that he's at the top of the class. And all of this stuff about him being overly aggressive and this and that, because two 2-year-olds were playing tug of war over a truck, that's what 2-year-old boys do. They see, that's what children do at that age. They see something they want, they grab it, and then they might tussle a little bit and they keep it moving. And I did tell her, and what are you doing about all these buck wild children right now? Look out your window that are playing in the playground, that are yelling, screaming, jumping off of stuff. What are you doing about them? Oh, I can't discuss what we know. The answer is nothing. There's no answer. I said, look out the window. Look at that child right there. Oh, my God. I went there because there is a difference in the way that black boys are treated than other students. And then they get into a statistical study in these schools. And I just wanted to make it clear to them, my children were not going to be part of a statistical study for playing tug of war with a truck at the age of 2. Mm-hmm. Because you know what that leads to? That leads to in middle school being in the juvenile system. And then once you're in the system, you continue to be in the system. And then you never get out of the system. And in a state like Georgia, you cannot go to college. You can't get a student loan if you're in the system.
But see, that's
what it leads to.
No, you're right. But see, that goes back to what Chappelle was talking about. There's a context for all of our children. All of them. There's a context for all of our lives. And the fact that we're not contextualizing this girl, she's another black person who was shot, right? But no one's giving her context. Because if you look at her, even as you look at Laquan McDonald, you got to indict a whole system. Because Laquan McDonald struggled against the odds. He had a lot of challenges. And people did not care for him. We collectively did not love him and care for him the way he needed to be loved and cared for. Sister Pearl, you still there?
Yes, Santita, I'm still here.
I'm sitting back. Go on.
I was just saying, I've had experiences probably different than anybody else's because of my son. But I can tell you that they do not view us as humans. The cops do not view black people, whether you're male or female, as human. And so when we see him shoot her, when she fell after the first shot hit her body, okay, so she was no longer a threat to anyone. When we see him repeatedly shoot her 3 more times, he has already been trained to isolate and kill her so that way that there is no
It was not even a conversation because I'm sitting up here watching the video. And I don't know how many people actually watch the video. It's like he rolls out the car. Hey, what's going on? Boom, 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 boom. He didn't even have sense to worry about the people that were surrounding Makia because he was shooting recklessly, in my opinion, because the girl in the pink was right next to her. And it's only by the God's grace that she didn't get hit because he didn't care. He was shooting in the direction. And so my thing is that because he didn't value her life, value any of the people around her life, this is how they're justifying the murder because she had a knife. But he doesn't know, why did she have this knife? Why did she have the knife? If he had to listen to the report, if he had to listen to the 911 call, if he had made a judgment, but because they don't see us as human, the preconceived notions they have of Black people, Black teens as aggressive and violent, his narrative was already formed before he pulled up. And this is what Black people have to go through every day. When we pull up to a stop, if they stop us for a traffic stop, because they have been trained that, okay, but this is a Black person, you have to be on guard. You have to have your hand on your gun because we don't know how Black people are going to act. This is the training that they're getting in these facilities. Always be prepared to kill Black people. Don't give them the benefit of the doubt. This is what happened. So when I look at my son's case, as he pulled up for assistance, and instead of helping him and getting him to the nearest hospital, they want to run his name, run his license plate. My son is dying and bleeding to death, and you are concerned about a damn car? And so the calculations that these officers make are already preconceived when it comes to Black and brown people. That's why we don't see any hesitancy. We don't see any de-escalation because it's the culture. It's what they're being taught from the beginning, from the academy. And so you interact differently with white than you do brown and Black. It's an unseen code that they have because I'm seeing this training go across from not just white cops, Latino cops, because everybody was surrounding my son was either Latino or white. And it also trickles down to some of the Black ones. Because like I said, it's a blue code of silence and a blue code of training that is being taught to these officers in order for them to already have these preconceived notions on us. And it's not just what's transpiring in the media. It is what is being trained. It is what is being trained, and that's what we have to combat. That's why I said, no matter how we teach our children to grow and to respect, if we don't change that culture on a institutional level, we'll never stop dying in the streets. We just won't. And by the hand of police, it will continue.
Or in your home. Thank you, Brianna.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
Skip Gates, get arrested in your home. Huh? I mean, come on.
Santita, I don't think that we can train that out of people. So one of the most important aspects, police reform, that's a hard phrase for me.
Okay.
Because when you say reform, you're talking about changing people, changing from the inside. And that's why we have people talking about abolishing police departments and just starting all over, which I don't think is necessarily a bad idea, because the people that you already have there, they are already who they are. You're talking about changing mindsets. That this way of thinking has been part of policing since its inception in slave patrols. How do you now come along and say, we're just going to change the way you think? It's about the people that are being hired. That's why a lot of people are being turned away from policing, because they don't fit the mold. They don't fit the model. We're not going to be able to mold them into this thing that we want them to be out there on the street, policing certain groups of people. So, thinking about how we're going to go forward is really important. because we may just have to scrap these plans about reform and training and just start over in some cases.
Start over, but start over. How would you do that?
Well, that's going to be up to the people. Now, if you ask me what my idea is, I would take something like a Newark model where they just fired all their police officers and rehired the ones they wanted and then hired new ones. Now, some people don't even want the police doing certain things, and I think that's fine too. I think the people need to get behind it. We need to start sitting there having conversations about what is it you want, and let's make that happen in police. Or if you even want the police, you want to call it something else. You know, you got police leaders. Who's holding them accountable? They're letting this stuff happen. You've got politicians. There's some laws that need to be passed. Where are these laws? We're kind of soft shoeing this whole police reform thing with some stuff that's don't really have any teeth, with some laws that don't have enough teeth. And please, I appreciate the things that are being done, but it's not enough and it's not fast enough.
You know what? I know you're gonna have to sign off in a second, but this is what I want to do. There are a couple of conversations, Chaparral, that we need to have, and you know, and you know how we've always done it. Let's talk about it with Santita Jackson and friends, of course, Chaparral and CKO regulars. Let's do this on Clubhouse, and of course, Chaparral, you and Marnie will get CK and I on Clubhouse. Because I know Sonia knows how to do it, but we're not. So CK, we're not going to ask you to do anything but be there. That's all.
And I'm looking at this little thing right now, and I have it. It's like a Clubhouse. But as I told you, I was actually in a meeting and all this Clubhouse stuff, and I couldn't believe that I was in a meeting and didn't know how to turn it off. It's an app.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Because I think, you know what, I want us to have to talk about the adultification of our girls, of our boys, and I also want to talk about what I think that Captain Pruitt has brought forth something really, really brilliant and important, something we're not talking about. We've talked about what we don't want, but now we need to talk about what we do, not just what we want, what we need. You know, police officers, there's a cultural shift that's happened. They used to be officers of the peace. You used to get arrested for disturbing the peace, which meant that peace was a baseline in our society. That is gone. And we need to think about that. We need to think about who we are, everybody, who we are. Sonia, I know you're going to have to go, and I know CK's going to have to go too, as must Chaparral, you get the final word. I know you got to go. Sonia, we're going to work out something. We got a couple of things that we need to do on Clubhouse. You in, girl?
Okay, and ladies, thank you so much. I always learn something listening to you all. I appreciate you all, love you, and thanks, Santita. And yeah, I'll see y'all on Clubhouse after CK figures it out.
No, Chaparral's gonna figure it out. Chaparral and Marty gonna figure it out.
And this is just pitiful. But you know, my children will help me. But it really was a pitiful moment.
Oh my!
I wasn't going to share it with anyone. I was just going to live with it and not say anything. But there we go. Look, all right, you all.
That's okay. Because when my niece
y'all have a good one.
I love you.
Seeing everybody.
I love you. When my niece picked up my phone, it was with one thumb when she was about 8 or 9, moving that thing around. Oh, Auntie, this is all you need to do. I said, oh my gosh, Auntie's an idiot, and my niece now knows it. Oh, bless her heart. Are you still there, Chaparral?
I am. I'm prepping for my event today, but I just wanted to thank you for this opportunity to talk about this because, like I said before, we have to begin to make sure that the world sees our Black and brown children as human. Well, that's really the bottom line.
You are my harasser in chief. You know I love you, girl.
I love you more.
I mean, that's right, because she's gonna call me and harass me, and then tell me something else I need to do, and that's okay. Like I have a moment to breathe. Then she's gonna tell me, "Oh, now you know what you need to do now. What, your girl? Take a nap." I'm like, really? Seriously? Yes. I'll be back in an hour. Have you taken a nap? No, Chaparral. Santita, you're making a mistake. I'm like, okay. I'm older than she is. You heard, Sonia, we are going back in August for our anniversary. We will have moved into our dormitory at Howard 40 years ago. It's hard to believe. Hard to believe These kids who were wet behind the ears.
Amazing.
16, 17, 18 years of age. Wow, 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 wow. I remember when my mother walked across that courtyard when she said she was leaving Washington. That was when I started to cry. When my mother turned around and said, "Okay, baby, I'm gone." Chaparral, my heart just broke into 1,000 teeny weeny pieces. And then after I cried that, I didn't cry anymore. I was good. I was good. I was good. But boy, oh boy, those were wonderful times, and we had some great times. I'm so glad to see that that Sonia's done so well. I'm so glad to see God blessing you and your ministry as it continues to unfold, Chaparral, and of course CK Hoffler, and everyone. Please go tell everybody about the Somebody podcast. They have had more than 1.3 million downloads. It's extremely successful. They've been winning awards, deservedly so, um, and we know that your son is cheering you on with all the work that you've got to do. Um, and we just thank God for you. We thank God for you. This is not the way, these things never come to us the way we really want them to. But, we just have to lean on God's word. We have to lean into God's way and into God's will so that we'll understand it better by and by, Chaparral. And I just thank God that you have made yourself available to God to be used and continue to bring us so much joy because you are truly nuts and we love you. Because I don't know what this girl's gonna say next.
I love y'all more.
Because let me tell you, she's a holy roller, right? But she has different hairstyles all the time. Then I saw her on Facebook with her "Come Hither" pose. I said, Who is this woman who's calling me on this other radio station, harassing me?" But I love her. She's my sister beloved. I love her so much, love her so much. And mm, mm, mm. Everybody, Chaparral, do you want to say anything else about Makia before we go?
I just think that everybody really needs to understand the foster care system. I think that we need to make sure they're held accountable, from DCFS to the foster mom to the adults that were fighting her. And it's so much more to this case than what meets the eye. And we need to ask the question, why did any of this happen?
Well,
why wasn't she protected in the beginning?
Even who actually calls, because I've read a lot of different news stories, and some say that Makia called. Some people say that the daughters called. Whoever called, Makia should not be dead right now. I've got to say, 4 shots, no taser. Okay, maybe the pepper spray might not have worked from the back, but certainly the taser would have. It would have worked. You're shooting someone with electricity. It would have worked as quickly as the gun, I would think. She doesn't have to be dead, everybody. And just think about how we treat other children. We treat other children with love and care and with understanding, with empathy. And it's a term I hadn't heard in a long time, the disempathy. Because
you always say that the Black people don't get the space that others do.
We don't.
We don't have the space to do certain things. You say that all the time.
But it's true.
It's so true.
We don't have the space. We don't have the space to be human. We don't have the space to be human. And I've seen it in my own life. And sometimes we, as Black people, can be guilty of that because our backs are against the wall. And so we need everybody to be perfect. That is not, if perfection is going to be your standard, then nobody's going to make it. Nobody. Nobody's perfect. Everybody does something wrong. Everybody thinks something wrong. Everybody wants to do something wrong. Everybody has done something wrong. Okay, so now that's established. Let that go. We have to not imagine and reimagine policing. It has to be redone. It doesn't need to be defunded. It needs to be refunded. You need to stop overfunding people who are underqualified to do the jobs that they do. We need to start paying social workers more and bring them into that system. Because sometimes you need to call a social worker and not a police officer, or have the police officer to be there as protection. But the person who should be doing the negotiating should be the psychologist, the psychiatrist, or the police, or the social worker, or the nurse. Or maybe we need to start, Chaparral, bringing up some old people, because no one can give you better advice than the elders. Even Richard Branson has pulled together these world leaders who've lived to a certain age. They're called the elders. It's an elders round table. When I need to find out really, Chaparral, about how marriage is supposed to work, I will ask my mother because she's done this almost 60 years, Chaparral. I think she knows something. I think she's worked something out. I'll even ask my father. I remember asking them about marriage some years ago. They kind of came up with the same answers. And that was almost 30 years ago, and their marriage has held. I think we need to just come up and, because Chaparral, I think we throw our elders away, Chaparral. You still there? And I think that's a mistake.
I am.
We should not throw
Yeah,
our elders
I
away.
agree.
Sometimes you need to bring them into a situation and let them calm things down. Please. So when we're talking about defunding the police, I think that language needs to be tweaked. It needs to be perfected. Because I think we should stop funding.
Yeah, I always say reallocate.
Yeah.
Because that's what they want. They want to reallocate these funds and put them into different areas. And so the media picked up on defund the police. But when you look at what the proposals are, is reallocation. So that's what they need to call it.
Well, but they have their own reasons for doing what they do. And I get it, but we have to have our own reasons. We have to begin to think about this a whole different way. We really do. We're the ones who have to take the bull by the horns. We're the ones. We have to determine. It's our society, and the police serve at our pleasure. We're the ones who have to decide what it is that we need from police. That's why we're going to get Captain Pruitt back on here, Captain Pruitt, because she said the Newark model. Okay. And, Amiri Baraka's son is the mayor in Newark, New Jersey, and he's doing a lot of wonderful things there. We need to talk to other people who are doing some things that are creative and that will increase the peace. I mean, I think that's some of the things that Senator Cory Booker was trying to do when he was the mayor of Newark. There's a way through this, everybody. There's a way through this. And I just think of, well, you know what? I tell you what, Makia doesn't have any more pain. She's left us behind to do the work. All the people who did not take care of her, all the people who did not love her well, all the people who disregarded her, she doesn't have to worry about that anymore. That's now our concern. We need to find out what's happening in the foster care system, not just in Ohio, but here and in California. And with the children who are being left in the border. Our children are not being cared for. Our elders are not being cared for. Everybody, no one's being cared for. As we're looking to give people this shot, this jab, no one is talking about Medicare for all or a universal single payer system. So are you running me down to give me a shot? If the shot makes me sick, or if I get COVID anyway, and more cases of that are happening, the breakthrough cases, I can't afford the therapeutics or the hospital visit. Now is the time for us to create a more perfect union and a beloved community that stretches out around the world. Now is the time for us to get therapeutics and shots to people all over the world. Now is the time to consider taking the profit out of we paid these pharmaceutical companies. We did. Billions upon billions of dollars. Now they've got unused doses because we're finding there's some problems with these shots. I'm not saying don't take it. I'm just saying know what you're taking. And I also say that wait a minute, when you get in line to take the shot, you ought to have a choice about which one you want to take. Now it's time for you to make all of those issues clear. You're the one with the power. Haven't you figured that out yet? This land is your land. This land was made for you and me and by you and me. So let's get with the program, everybody. Let's create the society that we need. Not just what we want. Get what we need, and then we'll get what we want. Much of what we want. You don't need everything you want. That makes you a little lazy. Chaparral, do you want to say anything before you go, my sweet?
Basically, Santita, I just want to say thank you for having me on again. And I appreciate you keep raising these important issues all the time because we need to be able to have someone who is going to bring the issues in a more broader sense. And that's why I love your show.
Oh, and I love you, Chaparral. I love you, Chappelle. And plus, when she doesn't like something I've done, she's going to let me know anyway. So I'm going to take that and, and hold on to that.
True.
She's going to let me know, girl, I don't want to hear that person anymore. Girl, one less guest today. Girl, 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 girl. She always gives it to me, but I love you. I love you, Chappelle. Love you and Dr. Reeves. So thank you so much. And Chappelle, you see, I got a new little setup. I got my the little kitchen desktop to hold my little thingy, and I love it because it doesn't take up any space. It's wonderful. But I love you. But you know what we're gonna do?
You look amazing. You look amazing.
You just being sweet, just because you like the necklace. You crazy woman. You know what we're gonna do? But we're gonna work out a couple of things to have on Clubhouse because I think we need to extend this conversation and have it on Clubhouse. Okay, let's do that in the next couple of days. Because in fact, Sonia said she wants to do that. We will do that, and then we will also we'll do Clubhouse. We'll do the adultification, but we'll also talk about what we want out of these police. What we want out of the police and what we need. Think about that, everybody. And of course, I don't know what we'll be talking about tomorrow, but you know what? Chappelle, President Biden's going to be speaking before Congress tomorrow. And he will have talked about these new CDC guidelines today. So, so why'd you give me?
I ain't too excited about him. But we shall see what he has to say.
Well, you know what? Let me tell you something. Real talk, real politics. He was not my first choice at all. That having been said, you work with what you got, and you work with who you've got. And so what we've got to do, remember I told you, before you get who you want, get what you need.
Get what you need.
Now we haven't quite gotten that right yet, but now that you have who you preferred, get what you absolutely need now. Now this you must push him to do the things that you need him to do. You got to push him. You got to push him. And you got to push Kamala Harris. You got to push. Doesn't mean I don't like you, but I tell you what, I didn't send you up in there to the window dress. I sent you in there to deliver for me. Now you make that happen. Make these people deliver for you. That's what they're there to do. I'm excited about the history, but I'm over that. Because guess what? People are out here starving. Period. So now, okay, make things happen. Make them happen. Make them happen. Make them happen. You know what you need. You know what you need in your community. You know what you need in your home. You know what you need in your bank account. Make it happen. The corporations got to bail out, and they're treating your bailout like it's a handout. Flip the script on that. Get what you need. And do not stop, can't stop, don't stop, won't stop until you do. Push real hard. Push and pray until something happens. I love you, everybody. I love you, Chappelle.
Love you more.
I love you. Love you, Marnie. Love you, everybody. It was a wonderful show, and I'm so glad that you all, participated today. I'll see you tomorrow. You know what? Send us some direct messages. Let us know what you want to talk about tomorrow. But I know we're going to have to delve into what we might be hearing from the president tomorrow and these new CDC guidelines, which continue to change. But, such is life. The one constant in life is change. We know that. I love everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. And I'm signing off right now, Chappelle. Thank you.